كافة هذه غايات الزراعة المقيدة، وضع بين قوسين الزراعة المقيدة. فهذه حقيقة من أعلى النسب موجودة في العالم العربي، استغلال التريتد ويست ووتر. في تحديات كبيرة أيضا في التعامل مع السلج، مع الحمأة الخارجي من محطات تنقية، اللي المتحدث اليوم إنه راح إن شاء الله يتحدثنا فيها عن كيف التعامل معه. هو رجل له خبرة عالية، اللي هو مستر ريتشارد شودي. He has a long career in environmental management, includes government services, consulting, industrial operations, and international development activities. He is specialized in integrated waste management, climate change, and renewable energy development, and operate a registered carbon credit CD project approved under the UN Kyoto Protocol. Currently, Mr. Shudi work as an operation for 2 years for the renewable energy project in Egypt and waste management project in Afghanistan. Also, Mr. Shudi has more than 40 years in experience. I'm not going to go in details because I sit here 8 years focusing on emission reduction and renewable energy, 7 years with the international development activities, 7 years in the corporate sector managing the environmental. Anyway, he's an expert in these subjects, and also he will talk about the main issue. He will go to discuss it, the sludge and how to deal with the sludge. And this is major things really here in Jordan. We face it now, and in the future we'll face this problem. So it is good to have a good speaker like Mr. Shudi to talk about it and to know about it as a knowledge for us all. I would like to welcome you, Mr. Shudi, in behalf of myself, on behalf of our audience. We welcome you here in Jordan, and the floor is yours. Please.
Thank you very kindly for those beautiful introductions. I'm really happy and honored to be here and share some of the experiences that I have had with all of you. There are many challenges that you are facing in terms of reimagining, not just destroyed things, but building new things. And a lot has changed. The ground has changed under our feet just within the last few years. Climate change is a reality, much better understood now than it was just a few years ago. And things like that mean that our approach to a lot of what we do should also change. It needs to be a little bit different. So one of the things that I wanted to do was share with you some of the information that came out in a recent piece of research that I did. It was commissioned by GIZ to do some analysis of how sludge is being managed in MENA region, and then specifically in Egypt and in Jordan, to see what sort of information might come out of that kind of an analysis that could inform the creation of, hopefully, new strategies, both in Egypt and in Jordan. So, what I was asked to do is to identify potential inputs to such a youth strategy based on being able to reduce environmental damage that's caused by inadequate treatment and disposal. It was to be based on capturing the energy potential of sewage sludge. And that's one of the things that ends up, for me anyway, being very important. There is a lot of energy that can and sometimes is accessed. And this particular piece of work allowed me to explore how that's happening in the MENA region and specifically here in Jordan and in Egypt. I was also asked to take a look at the potential benefits to agriculture based on different sludge management elements. And of course, very important, the climate change impacts and implications. In order to do this in a sort of coherent way, I was asked to take a look at the various nexus or relationship points of contact between sludge and energy, food production, water resources, and of course climate change. I was asked to look at MENA region first, and then in much more detail, Egypt and Jordan. I was also asked, after examining what the situation was, I was asked to look at what sort of a perspective shift would be required in order to get to, potentially anyway, a new management strategy for sludge. And what would be the key elements of it? All right, so I'm going to go through the information rather quickly, not in a lot of detail for much of it. However, if anybody has questions, I do have the full report with me. I don't have it all in my head. That's why I decided to bring the report with me. So detailed questions we can handle afterwards. Inshallah, I'll be able to find whatever it is that you're asking me about. Okay, so just very generally across the MENA region, and this won't be a surprise to most of you that work in water management of some sort, that within MENA region, the historical focus has been on wastewater treatment for reuse. That's been the focus, not on sludge. Sludge has been, for the most part, an afterthought, or more likely just a troublesome end result that has to be disposed of. But because MENA region suffers from water scarcity, Jordan more than most, it's not surprising that the focus has been on how can we reduce the amount of water that is used and how can we reuse the wastewater to the maximum extent possible. Just generally, Kuwait has aerobic treatment of the sludge, and Kuwait does use that as a fertilizer and conditioner. So Kuwait stands apart. The Emirates also have aerobic treatment of sludge, but the sludge is landfilled. It's not used for anything. And recently, Tunisia has started looking at sludge and appropriate sludge treatment technologies and approaches in order to be able to use that in agriculture. So within MENA region, not having included Egypt or Jordan in this, that's kind of how it looks. In other words, hardly anything is done throughout the region with respect to proactive, comprehensive management of sludge other than looking at it as a disposal problem. So let's look first at some of the key findings when you look at the nexus. What is, how does sludge and energy interact? What is the relationship there? So I'm just going to go through those various things in terms of the key findings. And in terms of energy, Of course, the organic component of sewage sludge represents potential energy. Historically and typically around the world, it's used in order to get at that energy, it's used as bulk fuel. If dried properly, it's used as bulk fuel, and for the most part in cement factories. Other very large-scale thermal operations have used sludge, but cement factories are the main thing. We have a problem of some sort? No. Yeah, I was assuming that you were seeing the slides. I guess you're not. You haven't seen them. Oh my God. Before you just been listening to what I'm saying, without saying that actually, I'm not making it up. This is real information on the slide. Oh well. Should I wait to see if it's going to go up or continue? Continue. Okay. Now, I do understand that it's part of the handout. Anybody that is registered, so you have to have registered, I guess. These slides are in the package that you would get upon registration. Okay. Actually, this is good. I can make stuff up now, and you won't know until after I'm gone. I like that. Okay, so I was talking about energy. So using it as a bulk fuel is kind of one way of getting at the energy. The second way is by introducing anaerobic digestion in order to create methane, and then burning that methane to create electricity. A better way of accessing the energy that can be found in sewage sludge. And it is used in many parts of the world, including here. And we're going to get to that in a little while. So, as an auxiliary fuel source, typically we're looking at 10 to 20 kilojoules per kilogram of energy that is held in sewage sludge. Now, this is a general number, of course. It's going to be absolutely unique to each particular operation, but generally speaking, it's 10 to 20 kilojoules per kilogram of potential energy if used as a bulk fuel. Now, typically, there are two major challenges to using dried sludge as an auxiliary fuel. Number one is that in order to actually get the requisite amount of energy out of this for the production, and typically it is cement factories, you have to have a moisture content of 5-10% max. Above that, it becomes problematic, and you're using as much energy to destroy it as you'd be looking to get from it. So moisture content is always a challenge, and any place around the world where dried sludge is used has very good protocols for maintaining a consistent dryness of 5 to 10%. Okay. All right, so that's so maintaining a uniform water content is an ongoing problem. It is of course solved in many applications, but initially anyway, it is quite a problem to not have a lot of variance. The second challenge is the chemistry. If there are a lot of heavy metals, interesting metals that are in there, it can render the ash, if it's burned in at a cement factory or power plant, depending on the loadings of heavy metals in the sludge, that ash now could become a hazardous waste, and you know, you're incurring a lot of additional cost disposing of an ash as a hazardous waste, simply because you had too high a metal content in the material coming in. So these are the main challenges with using sewage sludge as a bulk fuel. When it's used to generate electricity by undergoing anaerobic digestion, typically a ton of sludge that has undergone anaerobic treatment will produce around 333 cubic meters of biogas. And each cubic meters of biogas can generate about 2.5 kilowatt hours of electricity. And this is, again, a general number, but it doesn't vary all that much in terms of well, certainly not in terms of the 2.5 kilowatt hours of electricity per cubic meter of biogas. The main challenges to extracting the energy of sludge in this way is the relatively high capital cost of anaerobic digestion systems and the electrical elements that have to be put in place in order to generate the electricity. So that's the relatively high capital cost, although I must say that within just the last few years, that cost is coming down. Historically, it's been considered a high cost. It's been coming down. The second challenge, and people who operate waste management systems are very familiar with this if they have anaerobic treatment, is maintaining healthy anaerobic conditions is kind of an art form. It's much like making a good wine or a good beer. It's science and art, and this is a living thing, anaerobic digestion, and it's not just science. There is a bit of an art, and it's very easy to destroy the anaerobic culture, and you lose a month and many tens of thousands of dollars emptying and reintroducing and things like that. So that ends up being one of the other main challenges of trying to access energy in this way. So what's the relationship with food production? Again, these are just general, these are the general findings, and none of this is going to be a surprise to most of you, I would assume, if not all of you. First point is that the connection of organic waste and food production is as old as mankind and agriculture. It has always been there, and probably always will. The point is that properly treated sludge improves food production, often quite substantially. It does so by enhancing soil structure, and that in turn enhances water retention, something that is much more critical in certain places like Jordan should be. Water retention got to be high on the list of priorities. As well, it provides valuable nutrients to crops. So these are the pluses. The minuses, of course, is that inadequately treated sludge can easily contaminate plant life. It damages soil structures, and it can reduce crop production. So exactly the opposite if the material is inadequately treated. And a basic finding is that in most developing countries, sewage sludge that is applied to agriculture is generally not adequately treated. So that's a general finding because, of course, in certain instances it is very well treated and very appropriate. In terms of water resources, and I guess in terms of your background, this should have been the biggest piece, and it's not, and I apologize for that. But the nexus, the relationship of sludge to water resources is also very straightforward. The positive impact of sewage sludge on water resources is really through its impact on soil structure enhancement, So that would improve water retention and reduce irrigation requirements. That is a very strongly positive point of interaction or relationship between sludge and water resources. The negative is only too well known and experienced, and that is contamination of surface water from runoff and contamination of groundwater from leaching. And I think it's safe to say that most of the interaction of sludge and water resources that people are familiar with tends to be negative. So that's general finding. In terms of climate change then, the sewage sludge, the relationship of sewage sludge to climate change is absolutely related to the organic content of that sludge. And we have a 1-to-1 equivalency. So 1 ton of organic material in the sludge will ultimately, and it could be accelerated to a number of days, it can take weeks, months, and often years, but that 1 ton of organic matter will produce 1 ton of CO2 emissions, the basic element monitoring the change to climate, global warming. So it's a 1-to-1 relationship. So if we're looking at anaerobic decomposition though, and if that methane is captured and burned, those emissions are reduced by almost 90%. So that is the point of active interaction, because left to its own devices, as I've said, it's a 1-to-1. Sometime, like over the fullness of time, every ton of carbon will become a ton of carbon dioxide. So, but anaerobic decomposition, and if you can burn the biogas, the methane that is generated anaerobically, you can reduce the impact on climate change by almost 90%. Okay, so these are the kind of general findings. Let's take a look at the countries. So there'll be a bit more detail, but am I going very slowly? Am I okay for time?
If you speed a little bit slow.
Okay, I'll speed up just a little bit. Okay, so let's look at Egypt quickly. 370 wastewater plants. We're looking at a total design capacity of over 13 million cubic meters a day. So definitely orders of magnitude greater than what would be normal for Jordan. The Egyptian system operates at about 81% capacity. Okay. Now, 76 of these plants use oxidation ponds. 2 others use natural wetlands. In both of these cases, there is no sludge immediately available to look at with respect to how should it be managed. So the sludge from those is out of the running, as it were. And bear in mind that the focus of all of this is on sludge. Okay? Now, of the remaining 292 plants, only 1 provides anaerobic treatment which then produces biogas and electricity. And that's the Gabal al-Asfar facility in the Greater Cairo area. So that facility processes about 1.35 million cubic meters per day of effluent. That gives about 12,000 cubic meters per day of liquid sludge that is fed into the anaerobic digesters. They produce then about 100,000 cubic meters of biogas per day. With that, they generate 250 megawatt hours of renewable energy. It's about 65% of the energy requirement of that facility. So very significant, very significant. And at the end, we have about 300 tons per day of dried sludge, which is now, having been adequately treated anaerobically, it's pathogen-free and suitable for use in agriculture. There's another facility in Egypt called Alberca, which does aerobic composting for about 10 tons a day, a relatively small amount of the material that facility processes. What's interesting is that there seems to be recognition that composted sludge or composted fertilizer is more valuable, because it's sold for about 125 pounds per ton compared to about 100 pounds per ton for untreated sludge. The difference should be much greater, but it's interesting at least that there is a difference. All right, so additional details are in the slides. Let's just go to bottom line. There, for Egypt, there's about 2,383 tons a day of sewage sludge that's generated and goes to land application without it being properly treated. So there seems to be a lack of consideration of the resource potential of this material. That's one. So none of its energy or its benefit is really being considered, and there's inadequate consideration of the damage that this could be doing. It is nevertheless, notwithstanding rules, regulations, and public commitments to certain things, this is what happens there. It simply goes to land application. So, if that could instead be used as bulk fuel at about the 15,000 megajoules per ton rate, it represents about 35.7 million megajoules per day. So if it could be captured and used as an auxiliary fuel, that's a tremendous amount of energy. In Egypt, there have been some trials, some very limited pilots to see if this is the right way to go, to use dried sludge as an auxiliary fuel in cement factories. The results have been quite poor, and it's really for the two reasons. It's the two main challenges. Number one is water content wasn't uniformly at the 5 to 10%, and there were cases of elevated metals. The main reason, though, there wasn't much motivation to try to solve these problems, because Egypt at that point was looking at an energy crisis, big energy user, and coal was already on its way in. It was already through the system in terms of political discussion, and clearly the economics of coal as a bulk fuel are much superior to something like this. So for Egypt, using it as an auxiliary bulk fuel is not in the cards. So that's as a bulk fuel. Now, if it could be treated anaerobically in order to produce biogas, theoretically, we're looking at being able to generate almost 2,000 megawatt hours per day of electricity, but that's only if all of the available sludge could be used in this way. If we use an economies of scale argument to say, well, anything that's a megawatt of power or greater tends to be more cost effective, even at that, in Egypt, we could see over 51 megawatt hours of electrical power being added economically to the system. Now, in terms of climate change impact, the one facility that does generate biogas and electricity from that, it reduces the country's emission of greenhouse gases by 488,000 tons of carbon dioxide per year. So if the additional 42,000 tons of sludge that could be taken into that same system was to be taken into that system, you'd see another 2.175 million tons of emissions that would not be going and contributing to climate change. So in summary, Egypt generates about 2,000, almost 700 dry tons of sludge a day. 11% of that is treated anaerobically to generate electricity from biogas. This reduces greenhouse gas emissions by 488,000 tons a year. There's another 10,000 tons, or 0.4%, that is composted aerobically and making that material suitable for land application. But the bulk of it, so 2,383 tons a day, is applied to agriculture without adequate treatment or application controls. So there is a tremendous opportunity in Egypt with respect to upgrading the strategy of managing sludge in order to capture energy, in order to improve food production, and reduce environmental damage. Right, that's Egypt very quickly. Jordan, 27 operating wastewater plants, and again, this is about a year and a bit old. If you know that some of this information is not exactly right, it's 31. Alhamdulillah, thank you very kindly. I was going to say, if you know that any of it's right, keep it to yourself so you don't embarrass me. But Malish, it's already too. No, that was a joke. That was a joke. No. I would be happy to hear what has changed since I last looked at this information. So, okay. So it's now 5 of the wastewater plants use waste stabilization ponds. So again, as I mentioned earlier with Egypt, the sludge from there is not available readily at any rate. So we take that out of discussion in terms of what should be done. Because in this case, unless the system was to change, we should consider that sludge not available. So of the remaining 22 wastewater plants, Samra is the only one, and perhaps still the only one, that produces or that provides anaerobic treatment of the sludge to produce biogas and then to generate electricity.
We have another one.
There's another one that is now doing that? Wonderful. So, well, that's good. That's good. Let's, So I don't know how much for, anyway, let me carry on as if I didn't have that new information because I can't integrate it standing here in front of you. So let's just say Samra processes around 241,000 cubic meters a day of effluent. This produces or provides about 23,000 cubic meters a day of liquid sludge that goes to the anaerobic digesters, and they produce about 39,300 cubic meters a day of biogas. Now it's hard to know because how much electricity is actually produced, because the data from there includes the hydraulic generation, not just the biogas generation. But at any rate, it seems that around 90% of the facility's electrical demand is covered off by these two operations, the biogas and the hydraulic. Now, the important thing for me is to know that at the end of this, you have about 118 tons a day of dry sludge that comes out of the process. It's considered pathogen-free and therefore should be suitable for agricultural use, but it isn't used. It is stored on site. Still? It is stored on site. So, from my perspective, this is an opportunity that warrants a lot of examination. Okay. So, key findings here. Jordan's systems produce about 235 tons of dry sludge per day. If you subtract what happens at Samra, and I'll pretend I don't know about the other new one that is now on board, we're looking at about 110 tons a day of sludge that has potential beneficial use. And although most of this sludge has been treated, and it should be pathogen and coliform free, it is either stored on site or put into landfills, generally landfills without adequate engineering or environmental controls, and it is definitely seen as a disposal problem, or historically, perhaps it has changed just recently, but historically the sludge has not been seen as a potential resource. It has been seen as a disposal problem and cost. So, going back to applying the potentialities from an energy point of view, we're looking at potentially 600 million megajoules of renewable energy per year if it could be used as an auxiliary bulk fuel. From the readings and the discussions that I've had when I was doing this study, I understood that there have been discussions with cement factories about pilots, and perhaps they've been done since I've last checked on this. I know that there are historical issues, cultural, quasi-religious issues with fatwas in the past and things like that. So I know it's not as straightforward and easy here, but I certainly hope that the dialogue is going forward in terms of, is that a reasonable potential endpoint for sludge in order to capture the energy, okay? Now, if it was not to go that way, not to be used as a bulk fuel, but rather to generate electricity, we're looking at about 91 megawatt hours, 91 million megawatt hours that could be generated from this, additional to the 98.3 million, megawatt hour per day that's generated at Samra. Huh? Oh, all right, I'm being told I'm going on too long. Okay, so in terms of greenhouse gases, the emissions have been reduced by the anaerobic treatment and electrical generation. They have been reduced by about 192,000 tons per year. That we could see an increase of about 161,000 if all of the remainder could also be brought into an anaerobic system. The other thing, of course, is the potential use of this material in agriculture. Climate change is saying that Jordan, unfortunately, is going to have even less water in the future than it has had in the past. And that's very unfortunate because Jordan doesn't have enough water. But it's going to be less. Over 50% of the water that's used is used in agriculture. So obviously, Jordan is challenged to try to find ways, crops that use less water, or irrigation processes that are more conservative of the water that's being used. In those discussions, the potential application of sludge in terms of how it can improve water retention and reduce irrigation water demand should be part of it. That should be part of the conversation. Okay. So basically, last sort of thoughts is in imagining a way forward with any new waste management initiatives. With respect to sludge, the consideration should look at the hierarchy of potential benefit. Instead of looking at it from the beginning as a problem, the look really should be, this is a potential resource, and at the top is the energy. You know, either direct or indirect, this material represents energy, and maybe, possibly, that can be properly picked up. And secondly, look at the potential value to agriculture. Look as well at the climate change effects in terms of different management options. And of course, finally, the whole point is to reduce or eliminate contamination from how sludge is managed. But the discussion really needs to be, there's a potential resource, there are different ways it could be accessed. Some of those ways will work in this place, but not in another place. That conversation should take place nevertheless. And I really do apologize for going on too long, but as I say, we can have, I'll be happy to answer questions later.
Thank you, Mr. Shuli, for this nice presentation, which is very important for us, more especially subject to discuss about the slides. Just to add something, some of our wastewater treatment plant now deal with 365,000 meter cubic per day after the expansion last year, which is the largest wastewater treatment plant in Jordan. And we have the same speaker says about we produce energy from the sludge. We have another wastewater treatment plant, Shalal, also we produce the energy. We have two more, inshallah, in the future. One, they are under process on the water, and the other one will be central airport. الصلاه بالنسبه للفتوى الشرعيه اخذنا حسن على الفتوى الشرعيه من اداره الافتاء لاستعمالها للغايات الحرب وخاصه في السمنت فاكتوري. كان السابق لما كان سعر الفلويد غالي شوي كان في حديث جاهد مع مصانع الاسمنت حتى انه نعمل على هذا المشروع، ولكن بعد ما انخفض سعر الفلويد شوي تراجعوا، ولكن يعني معروف انه صار في طاقه كبيره جدا. ما بدي انا اعطي لما مر معنا شويه وقت كثير، بدي اترك المجال لكم اذا في واحد حابب يسال. فاللي عنده اي سؤال بليز يعني نسال الاخ السبيكرز. تفضل.
Omar Al-Banna from CEC. Thank you, Mr. Shuki, for the presentation. My question is about the linkage between the direct burning of the sludge and the percentage of the gases and senses in the atmosphere. And would that affect us as maybe the acid rain to come back in case of usage of the sludge as a direct burn in the cement factories? Thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch what the specific question was. Sorry.
In simple words, is there any side effect of using the sludge direct burning, and the percentage of gases in the environment, in the atmosphere, and the acid rain? Thank you.
Well, no, in the sense that any operation that burns bulk material has emission limits. Those emission limits are imposed by government agencies based on health implications, and there's a full system. So changing the fuel cannot defeat the purpose of environmental controls. So using sludge as an auxiliary, it wouldn't replace the primary fuel at all. It And this is what happens everywhere, is that individual elements are examined on the basis of the economics. And on the basis of the economics. And typically, things like this will fail. The economics don't favor this kind of thing. One of the things that I like about these sorts of venues, the kind of conference that the engineers here are having, is that it is integrated. And that's one of the key messages these days, is that decision-making should not be within the confines of a singular item, a silo, if you will. You really need to take a look at benefits and impacts across a lot of different disciplines. So, for example, a consideration like that, like, should this be used as an auxiliary fuel? Within the, looking at it only as the economics of operations of a cement factory, the answer will almost always be no. It doesn't make economic sense. However, if you bring in, well, what is the cost to the kingdom, to society, for managing it in different ways? What are the implications to climate change or water pollution? If you can factor in enough of the other elements, you can very easily come up with different answers to a basic question. But it really takes integrated examination and a lot of multi-group discussion. It's not something, it's something that society has to see the benefits of and agree to or not agree to. But the point is, more and more, we should be looking at issues through more than one prism, more than, in terms of more than one side. Sorry, again, I don't want to too much.
Any more questions, please, Dr. Joe?
My question is about the public acceptance of reusing sludge for agriculture purposes in Egypt compared to Jordan. Did you look into this specific point? Because so far we have some troubles of reusing sludge for agriculture, and particularly we have no resistance from the Ministry of Agriculture. So whether did you have any chance to figure it out? And just another comment that I also would like to add is, of course, sludge has to be treated and reused properly, but at the same time, we really have to put it in a bigger frame to understand it. If we look to the menu, for example, that is very much accepted to be used for agriculture purposes without any kind of treatment or composting whatsoever. It contains even more pathogenic content and more contaminants with respect to nitrogen and compared to the sludge, but not this is accepted to be used. So we really have, as you mentioned, we go out of the silos, think together that pollution has to be addressed from different perspectives. It's not only the sludge, but there are also, at least the sludge is one point. We collect it, we have it at one point, we know how to control it. The main group, on the other hand, it's not point and it produces probably more pollution compared to the sludge. So,
okay, well, I will try to respond as best I can. In terms of, do I have any sort of insight as to why things are that way in terms of public perception? The answer is no, I really don't. know from the beginning of time, these two things have always been integrated. That's how crops grow. They've always grown by having animal and human fertilizer. They always have, even before society was cultured the way that we are now. Egypt, on the other hand, seems to, notwithstanding that there are lots of laws that are written, there's good analysis. As a society, it seems not to care very much that the material isn't properly treated and really shouldn't be used in the form that it's in. It really should be. Somehow, that society doesn't really care that much. Absent any high-level health scares, this has been going on for years and years. Now, there is nibbling at the edges. There is work that, and I mentioned in the one place where aerobically treated sludge sells for a bit of a premium. So there's acknowledgement that it's better, but people there are not so risk averse for them not to use untreated stuff. They use them both. And if there was more treated, there would be more treated used. But they will use even untreated. Why Jordan has so far not wanted to use properly treated, that's something that I honestly have no insight. But I think that the more discussion there is of how things fit together, the multifaceted, you mentioned it yourself earlier, Dr. Maha, that we need to look at things as not just from one perspective, but from multiple perspectives. The more of that happens, the more I think the closer we'll come to to using quite properly this resource within agriculture here in Georgia. I'm hopeful, but I have no magic answer. I really don't understand why it's been that tough.
As you mentioned, really we are very care here in Jordan about to use the sludge, especially for the agricultural purposes. By the way, just I want to mention and insist, we don't use any kind of sludge in the agricultural sector in Jordan now. It's very important just to mention it now, but even as His Excellency said, we have to think seriously to use this one, especially for the soil structures, at least, even in the desert area. So we have to think, in Jordan loudly, how can use this sludge for the best of the agricultural purposes, especially at the desert area, to make the structure of the soils good, which is one good. Even we don't use it for the growing any kind of plants or vegetables in Jordan. I want to say thank you for Mr. Shudi, for you all, for your listening and for your response to this presentations. Hopefully we'll see you, and thank you so much for your listening to us, and thank you again, Dr. Shudi. Thank you. And we have certain time.
If I may to the podium, Mr. Sابع, and Mr. Benjamin Smith are here.
Please, could you?
Mr.
Yes.
And Mr. Awad.
بدنا.
As I said, we are running behind schedule about 20 minutes, so we'll start right away with the first presentation by Mr. Sابع. rally. And the title, an important one, in fact, local communities as partners with government institutions in democratic and reconciliation programs. Mr. Rally is from an institute called Together, Association for the Development and Environment, or for Development and Environment. He's a citizen engagement expert. 27 years work in development, international organization, and with local NGOs. And he's a founder of the Together Association for Development and Environment. His research interests are community mobilization, new technology for sanitation system. So, Sarah, you have 15 minutes, please. I have to start.
السلام عليكم. أنا هتكلم بالعربي طبعا، هتكلم بالعربي في البرزنتيشن لأنه أنا هقول لكم تجربة لمصر ابتدت من تقريبا سنة. تجربة ما بين وزارة الإسكان والشركات القابضة. احنا عندنا الشركات القابضة اللي هي الشركات المسؤولة عن مياه الشرب والصرف الصحي في مصر، ومجتمع مدني. ودي تجربة شوية يمكن جديدة بالنسبة لنا في مصر، إن المجتمع المدني يكون شريك في بعض المشروعات المرتبطة بالصرف الصحي. وزارة الإسكان هو مشروع ابتدى من سنة تمويل من البنك الدولي، لأن البنك الدولي مهتم بأن يبقى فيه مشروعات في الريف المصري. احنا عندنا مشكلة في مصر، المشكلة أن 80% من القرى والمناطق العشوائية في مصر ما فيهاش صرف صحي متكامل، لكن فيها النظم القديمة اللي هي المراحيض العادية أو حاجة زي كده، لكن ما فيهاش صرف صحي شامل يقدر يغطي المناطق دي. وعشان كده عندنا مشكلة كبيرة في المياه الجوفية اللي هي تقريبا المفروض انها مستقبل مصر، لأن عندنا مشكلات في النيل وبعض المشكلات المرتبطة بالمياه. فكل المراحيض العادية اللي هي في المناطق الريفية اللي بتمثل تقريبا 60% من سكان مصر، يعني ما يعادل 60 مليون نسمة ساكنين في الريف المصري أو في مناطق شبه حضرية، دول ما عندهمش مشروعات للصرف الصحي، لكن التلوث الناتج من عندهم بيأثر على المياه الجوفية اللي هي المفروض مستقبل مصر في مياه الشرب. الموازنات اللي موجودة في الشركات أو في الوزارات ما تغطيش تكلفة إن احنا عشان نقدر نغطي الريف المصري. عندنا 4600 قرية أم دي يعني قرية ولها توابع، فتقريبا لو حسبناها تطلع في حدود 55,000 قرية موجودة في مصر، من أسوان لحد سينا وبالمناطق اللي حواليها المناطق الجديدة اللي ابتدت تتعمل. فعشان كده كنا محتاجين في مصر إن عايزين في حدود 88 مليار جنيه عشان نقدر نغطي الصرف الصحي في مصر. فكانت الخطط اللي معمولة خلال الفترة اللي عدت نبقى في مشاركة مجتمعية في المشروعات اللي بتتنفذ، الناس تشارك بالتكلفة، من التكلفة جزء من التكلفة. فلما ابتدينا نتكلم على خطط العمل ده مع برضه مؤسسات مجتمع مدني بتشتغل في المشروعات دي، لقينا ان اللي يقدر يساعد فيه المجتمع هو ممكن تبقى الأراضي اللي ممكن يتعمل عليها محطات المعالجة أو محطات الرفع، أو تكلفة التوصيلات اللي هي المنزلية اللي كانت بتغطيها بعد كده المؤسسات الحكومية. في تقريبا 30 سنة اللي فاتت المشاركة المجتمعية ضعيفة في مصر، أو المؤسسات الحكومية ما كانتش بتركز على المشاركة المجتمعية، لكن كانت بتركز على الموازنات الموجودة يقدروا يغطوا بيها مشروعات، لكن مش لازم المجتمع يشارك، لكن المهم إن احنا نوفر له خدمة. فعشان كده كان في فجوة ثقة ما بين المؤسسات الحكومية وما بين المجتمع خلال السنين اللي فاتت إنه ممكن يتعاون في تنفيذ مشروعات. المشروع ابتدى من سنة، وكانت الخطه فيه ان احنا نساعد وندعم شركات المياه والشرب ومياه الشرب والصرف الصحي، وبالذات المهندسين اللي بيشتغلوا مع المشروع في الشركات دي، وهم اعداد كبيره بالنسبه لهم. بالنسبه لنا ان ندعمهم ونرفع قدراتهم وان يقدروا يتعاملوا ازاي مع المجتمع، مش بس في الامور الهندسيه، لكن ازاي يخلوا يبقى لهم دور انه يحفزوا المجتمع يكون شريك في عمليات التنفيذ. وعشان كده المشروع هو تحت تايتل معين، واتعمل له اداره جديده اسمها مشروعات الصرف الصحي القروي في مصر، وده هيمتد المشروع ده تقريبا في حدود 20 سنه عشان نقدر نغطي كل مصر من الصرف الصحي. عشان كده كان لازم نحط له اسس. من الاسس الاساسيه اللي لازم نعملها ان احنا نعمل نظم تدريبيه لرفع قدرات المهندسين عشان يقدروا يتعاملوا مع المجتمع المدني، تتعمل في كل قطاع من قطاعات المحافظات في قسم للمشاركه المجتمعيه يبقى مسؤول عن الحوار المجتمعي ويحفز المجتمع ان يكون له دور. الجزء الثاني انه نعزز نظم للمساءله، ودي جزء مهم احنا مركزين عليه، ان يبقى في مساءله متبادله ما بين الشركات المسؤوله عن مياه الشرب والصرف الصحي وبين المجتمع، وازاي يبقى في نظم للشكاوى والتظلمات خاصه بالمشروع عشان نقدر نشتغل مع المجتمع. الجزئيات الاساسيه عشان نقدر نوصل لده عملنا مع مجموعه من الشركات. طبعا احنا اخذنا 150 قريه كمرحله اولى هنشتغل عليهم، وعشان كده دي عدد كبير، يعني ما يعادل مثلا 4.5 مليون نسمه هيتوفر لهم صرف صحي في القرى. وعشان كده كان لازم نعمل بعض الاسس اللي نقدر نعرف بيها احتياجات المجتمع. فدورنا على مين هم اصحاب المصلحه في الاساسيين بالمشروعات في المجتمع، فلقينا الشركات القابضه، المواطنين، المؤسسات الحكوميه المركزيه من اهم الناس اللي لهم مصلحه، الهيئات الاداريه المحليه اللي هم الوحدات المحليه اللي موجوده في القرى، او منظمات مجتمع مدني كان لها دور في تنفيذ مشروعات مرتبطه بمياه الشرب او الصرف، وشركات المياه المحليه. دول كانوا هم اساس المجموعه. طيب عشان نقدر نشتغل مع ده لازم نعرف المجتمع بتاعنا شكله ايه، الشكل المجتمع بتاعنا اللي ممكن نتعامل معاه. فاحنا عندنا مجتمع جمعيات اهليه معموله من سنه 60، في منها الفعال وفي غير الفعال، فاحنا بنحاول نفعلها في المجالس الشعبيه، في المؤسسات الدينيه، في القيادات الطبيعيه، وده الاساس، لان احنا يمكن زي الاردن الريف بتاعنا ريف قبلي بيعتمد على العائليه، مش بيعتمد على افراد، لكن الريف له مداخل اساسيه عندنا ان احنا بنتعامل مع شيوخ او عمد او قيادات مجتمعيه هم اللي لهم القرار داخل المجتمع. فعشان كده ده المدخل الاساسي بتاعنا في كل الريف المصري. لما بنشتغل على اللي هم مفاتيح المجتمعات اللي هم يقدروا يساعدوا في اتخاذ قرار سريع مع المجتمع، لانه المشروع اصلا في حدود 5 سنين، وده لازم نوفر 150 محطة معالجة لا مركزية. مش هنعتمد على المحطات المعالجة الكبيرة اللي عندنا محطات في القاهرة وفي اسكندرية محطات كبيرة، لكن احنا هنعتمد على كلاستر، كل كلاستر بيبقى 5 أو 6 قرى مع بعض نغطيهم بمحطة واحدة. الأنشطة اللي احنا بنحاول نخلي المجتمع يساعد فيها، انه اراضي المحطات ايا كانت شكل المحطات، حتى لو محطات الرفع حطينا لها معايير وحطينا لها مقاييس، وخلينا المجتمع يبتدي يوفر الاراضي دي، واحنا حفزنا المجتمع. انت في حاله توفير الاراضي دي احنا نتعامل المحطه تغطي صرف صحي. الحاجه الثانيه المجتمع عشان نقنعه بنحسبها معاه تكلفه ماليه، مش بس تكلفة مجتمعية، تكلفة مالية. انه عندنا احنا المراحيض العادية بتكلفتها بسيطة، لكن عمليات الكسح اللي هي النزح في التلوتات بتكلف شهريا ما يعادل مثلا في حدود 100 جنيه او 150 جنيه مصري. لكن في حالة المحطات لما تتعمل محطة صرف لا، ده انت هتكسب اكتر من كده بكتير، انت مش هتدفع 20% من تكلفة اللي انت بتدفعها في ده. فعشان كده بنحفز المجتمع ان يساهم. تقريبا ال 150 قريه اللي احنا هنشتغل فيها، ال 150 قريه وفروا الاراضي لحد دلوقتي تقريبا، وعندنا احتياطي تاني اكتر من كده، لانه بنتعامل معاهم على اساس انت في مكسب اساسي تتعامل منه بتشتغل عليه. الحاجه الثانيه انه طبعا في سؤال مهم عندنا في مصر، انه احنا الريف المصري 60 او 70% من اللي عايشين فيه بيعتمدوا على الزراعه، ما بيعتمدوش على الأعمال الأخرى، لكن بيعتمدوا على أعمال الزراعة. فسؤالهم الأساسي المحطات دي هتديهم سماد من اللي طالع ده ولا لا؟ وعشان كده معانا متخصصين ابتدوا يشتغلوا على فكرة إعادة استخدام الحمقى مرة تانية. ان احنا بنعالجه بنظم تانية بالكمبوست واعاده مخلفات زراعيه وربطها بمخلفات حيوانيه عشان نقدر نعديهم سمات. فعشان كده بنحفز المجتمع بده. احنا جزئيه مهمه جدا هو التشاور مع المجتمع بصوره مستمره. عشان كده قطاعات الشركات ووزاره الاسكان اتعمل فيها قطاع اساسي للمشاركه المجتمعيه وتعبئه موارده، وده القطاع ده احنا بنحاول بقدر الامكان كمجموعه متخصصين بندربهم عشان يبقوا يساعدوا المجتمع يكون فعال. كمان حطينا بعض الاستراتيجيات مع الشركات على عمليه التوعيه. كان المهم بالنسبه للشركات هي فاتوره الميه او فاتوره الصرف انه يحصلها، ده الاهم بالنسبه له، تحصيل الفواتير هو الجزء الاهم. فعشان كده كان بيوعي المجتمع على هذا الاساس. وكان في نظم اخرى للمساءله، هو بس كان عندنا الخط الساخن اللي الناس ممكن تشتكي منه او حاجه كده. لا، احنا فعلنا اكتر من جزء في عمليه المساءله للمجتمع. احنا عملنا ابلكيشن موبايل للي هم ممكن يستخدموا الموبايل، عملنا استمارات للي ما بيعرفوش يقروا ولا يكتبوا جوه المجتمعات. احنا عندنا 30% من المجتمع المصري ما بيعرفش يقرا ويكتب في الريف، فعشان كده كان لازم نديهم وسيله، وهم الفقراء والمعدمين، وده فئه احنا ما نقدرش يعني نجنبها، لكن احنا فوكس عليها ان هيبقى لها دور ويبقى لها مساءله معانا. الحاجه الثانيه ان احنا عملنا مجموعه من الادله اللي تساعد الاقسام دي اللي موجوده في الشركات وفي وزاره الاسكان انهم ازاي يصقلوا مهارات القيادات حتى الطبيعيه. وخدنا قرار حتى مع الوزاره ان كل ال 150 قريه يبقى فيها لجنه محليه مسؤوله عن ان هي تساعد في تنفيذ المشروع ده. مش بس تساعد في تنفيذه انها توفر اراضي او توفر او تحفز المجتمع، لا، ده رقيب حتى على المجاولين اللي هينفذوا عمليه المجاوله بتاعه الصرف، لانه الريف المصري يختلف عن المدينه. المدينه ممكن قرار حكومي اقفل شارع ما فيش مشكله، لكن الريف صعب ان يحصل ده. فعشان كده عشان نسهل عمليه التنفيذ حتى على في جهه المجاولين كان لازم يبقى في ناس من المجتمع هم اللي يساعدوا المجاولين على عمليات التنفيذ. وبنعمل حاجات زي بابلينج هيرنج على فترات، جلسات مع المجتمع عشان يقدر يتحاور مع المجاول مش يتحاور معانا، عشان يسهل له عمليه التنفيذ. في جزء تاني لبناء قدرات المجموعه اللي موجوده داخل الشركات. احنا عملنا لهم زي اعاده تاهيل، عملنا لهم دورنا على اساس ان احنا نعمل خطه تحسين اداء للعاملين وتحفيز، مش بس تحسين اداء لكن وتحفيز، في انه مع انه المجتمعات المحليه كلها تقدر تغطي فاتوره الكهرباء وفاتوره الميه وفاتوره الصرف، ده معناه ان العائد على الشركه بيزيد. احنا الشركات اللي عندنا او الشركات اللي هي الشركات القابضه بتاع الصرف ومياه الشرب بتعتمد في ميزانياتها على نفسها، الحكومه لا تدعمها. الشركات الفواتير والتحصيل الشهري هو اللي بيغطي تكلفته. فعشان كده حتى المهندسين والعاملين والمتخصصين في الشركات بنحفزهم انه يعملوا ده، انه لما مع زياده العائد من الفواتير، لا، ده ممكن العائد يزيد بالنسبه لك كمؤشر في عمليات التنفيذ. ان احنا حطينا اسس مع الشركات ومع وزاره الاسكان ان قبول المجتمع ده شيء اساسي. كان ما عندناش انه كان عندنا فجوه كبيره في المؤسسات الحكوميه انه يقتنعوا بدور المجتمع، ده دور مش لازم يبقى موجود. احنا متخصصين وفنيين ومهندسين، احنا اللي جايبين التكنولوجي، احنا اللي جايبين الافكار، فعشان كده هو هيتقبلها. لا، لازم يحصل حوار، لانه في مشكلات كبيره جدا في موضوعات الصرف بالذات في تنفيذ مشروعات الصرف في مع المجتمع. لو احنا سيبناه يقدر، لو سيبنا المتخصصين يثبتوا الانظمه بتاعتهم. عشان كده القسم الثاني اللي معانا في كمتخصصين في التكنولوجي بتاع المحطات المعالجه، قبل ما نبتدي المشروع حطوا اكتر من 6 انظمه للتريتمنت يونت اللي هي المحطات المعالجه، عشان في بدايل داخل المجتمعات. لان عندنا مثلا في مجتمعات ما تقدرش توفر اراضي كبيره، وفي مجتمعات توفر اراضي كبيره. طب ده ينفع مع اي نظام او ده ما ينفعش اي نظام، وده يبقى برضه في حوار مع المجتمع. انا اخدت منك اوكي تمام. احنا برضه جزئيه بناء القدرات هي دي جزء اساسي، ان احنا بنقيس على بناء القدرات المتخصصين انه بيقيسوا رضا المواطنين على الخدمات المقدمه، ودي بتزود الفعاليه معانا. في منهجيه جديده احنا بنبتدي نشتغل عليها اللي هي منهجيه اجيبها بسرعه نجيب البرهجيه دي عشان اللي هي السي ار سي، اللي هي اللي هي كارت القياس رضا المواطنين القبلي، ودي نموذج احنا عاملينه على اساس ان احنا كل 6 شهور نقيس مدى رضا المواطن على الخدمات المقدمه، لانه المشكلات بتيجي بانه ما يبقاش فيه رضا على خدمه معينه او حتى سرعه اداء الخدمه، فدي بتبقى مشكله عند المواطنين انه ما بيقدرش احيانا يعجز عن تسديد الفاتوره او يتمرد عن تسديد الفواتير، ودي احنا عايزينها تمشي في سلاسه اكتر. فعشان كده كان لازم نبني اداه تربط ما بين الشركات وما بين المواطنين في كل المؤسسات. الجزء الاخير ان احنا عندنا مؤسسات المجتمع المدني، الجمعيات زي عندكم او المؤسسات، دورها ده فعال معانا في العمل ده، لانه استمراريه المشروع ما بعد تنفيذه هو الاهم. وعشان كده احنا بنستمر حتى على اللجان او الجمعيات اللي موجوده بان نديها دعم مؤسسي بصوره مستمره عشان يقدر يساعد الشركات في عمليات التنفيذ، لان احنا بنتكلم على تقريبا خدمه ال 150 قريه 4.5 مليون نسمه، فده معناه انه ده اعداد كبيره ما يقدرش اي شركه في محافظه معينه تغطيها الا لما يكون معاها شريك من داخل المجتمع. شكرا لكم.
شكرا جزيلا. حقيقة الموضوع مهم جدا مبسوط انه اسمع من مصر ايضا تجربة المركزية في معالجة النيابات، وفكر ان التجربة مش بسيطة حقيقة الموضوع. نفكر على ما كان اشتغل فيه جميع المملكين، التجربة الجميلة لنا اشتغلنا على المجتمع المحلي من البداية، يعني كود ديزاين كود برودكشن، مش بس اللجان المحلية. في مجال عندنا سؤالين ساعات. تفضل. بس باختصار يا جماعة، بس 3 دقائق.
تمام. دكتورة غادة السابع من الجامعة الأردنية، احنا التقينا امبارح وحكينا عن موضوع البايوغاز سيستمز وتقبل الناس لاستخدام الدايجستيت، وحضرتك هلا ذكرت اصحاب المصلحة وكانوا داعمين كثير للمشاريع اللامركزية. سؤالي، هل واجهتوا مقاومة من أصحاب غير المصلحة زي مثلا مستوردين الأسمدة الكيماوية فيما يخص الدايجستيت، خصوصا أنه توجهوا إلى أنه يصير استخدام الدايجستيت سلاج في الزراعة regulated ومونيتور؟
الحقيقة السنة دي كده واحد كده عليه مستوردين وشركات في دول عربية أي دول ثانية، يمكن مصر مع الدول السنة الكيماوية عشان كده المقاومة صعبة، لكن احنا في جزئيتين من الأماكن. جزئية منها في محطات معينة في وحدات بيوغاز، وحدات البيوغاز دي بيبقى عملها أساسي على السماد، فبيبقى زي في مع الإدارة المسؤولة عن المحطة في عندهم ليست المساعدين اللي ممكن يوصلوا السماد. احنا عندنا احتياج للسماد البلدي قوي جدا، لأن الأراضي المستصلحة اللي عندنا ما ينفعش تيجي بكلام، فلازم تيجي بسماد، فكل الكميات اللي طالعة من البيوغاز تقريبا يعني لها جزء لفترات زمنية. حاجة تانية إن في دلوقتي مع وزارة التنمية مشروع كبير بيتنفذ لوحدات بيوغاز منزلية، احنا منفذين أكثر من 300
farmers use cowdung. China, they use human waste to use that. This is a big factor there. In China, they have each house has a digester blower. They use some kind of plant which they have to accelerate the biodigestion. So getting the biodigestion to start is also big problem with the temperature effects. The waste, the biogas plants which are funded by the government in rural areas, they went for some time and then they failed because the farmers did not know what to do. Keep their gas going. Keeping it going is a big art, as Richard said. It's not science. It's part science and part art. You have to know how to do this. It doesn't, the investment is wasted. Many farms rented for this. They are like useless. So this is a waste of money.
Thank you. Because that was an intervention rather than a question.
عندنا نوعين في مصر في السلايد اللي طبعا محطاتهم على الاستخدام في الارض الزراعيه العامه بايما حسب قوانين لكن معاه استخدام ان هو يتعمل كومبوست بطريقه معينه مخلفات زراعيه ومخلفات حيوانيه وعمليات ارض ممكن تستخدم والمزارع دلوقتي عندنا شويه بينفع في الجزء ده فبيستخدموا بنفس الطريقه لكن لو يقدر ما ياخدش السلايد دايركت من المحطه ويستخدموا كسرات وده هو عارف التاثير سلبي عليه اكتر لانه في عناصر ثقيله وحاجات كتير كده بتاثر بالسلب على الارض لكن البيوجاز ده امر لا هوائي موجود في امريكا كل الكتير كل المعاملات الموجوده السماء عندنا بيستخدموه حتى كعباز بياخدوه في كاس ويستخدموه اثناء الري مش بس في عمليات لما بيجي رحله الارض وكده لا بياخدوه واثناء الري بياخدوه في الناس كمان يعني وده اسمها عالم الجوده بالنسبه واحنا بنحاول نساعد بقدر الامكان مع عمليه التحاليل اللي موجوده في الشركات كلها ان احنا نعمل تحاليل للتربه قبل استخدام عمليات التسميد دي وعشان نشوف الارض شكله ايه تاثيره على التربه شكله.
Thank you very much. Indeed, it's a very interesting subject, and I think what the minister doesn't do justice to the subject. It's very good. Thank you very much indeed. Our next speaker is Mr. Benjamin Smith, who's a WASH specialist. WASH stands for Water Sanitation Hygiene with University of Jordan, and currently leads water and wastewater network projects in Zagreb, refugee camp. He has qualifications in civil and environmental engineering and has over 15 years experience in water industry with Australia, Southeast Asia, including both owner and contractor side roles in the delivery and operation of water and wastewater treatment plants, dams and water supply systems. And Mr. Smith will be giving us a lecture on Zagreb refugee camp reflections on the provisions of water and wastewater systems in Jordan, Jordan's largest refugee camp. You have 15 minutes, please. Sure.
I can't quite see it. It's in the session. No.
Okay, I'll just
Yes. Yeah, maybe it's better if you.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here today to share with you some of the learnings from UNICEF's experiences in delivering water and wastewater services in Zatri refugee camp in particular. Unfortunately, I don't have a screen behind me, but I'd encourage you just to view the screens to my left and right. as I have quite a few graphics and photos which will complement the presentation. So firstly, who is UNICEF and what are we doing in Jordan? So most of you would know that UNICEF is the UN agency responsible for championing the rights of women and children in Jordan. Not in Jordan, but internationally, but also here in Jordan. Within the UN system, UNICEF is the lead agency in the WASH sector, which is water, sanitation, hygiene. So where there are other actors or UN agencies involved and UNICEF is present, UNICEF takes the lead role. So what is UNICEF doing in Jordan? So UNICEF is currently providing WASH services to 4 refugee camps in Jordan. Zatri and Azraq are the largest camps, as well as Cyber City and King Abdullah Park, although I think they're currently being in the process of being wrapped up. We also provide WASH services to the northeastern border area. Some of you will know that following the Syria crisis, there's quite a large population of refugees camped at the border in the northeastern border area. So UNICEF is providing water services to the population there through water trucking and also piping the water. UNICEF also assists the government in providing water and sanitation services in schools within Jordan, predominantly in vulnerable regions, rural regions of Jordan. We also assist the government in constructing infrastructure in some of the host communities, again, rural areas of Jordan. Providing services to vulnerable tent settlements, so those communities who don't have shelters or mobile, and also supporting the government in policy level support. And I've just got a few pictures on the right of an operation from last year from the northeast border region where UNICEF was part of a consortium of agencies to actually lift food supplies and hygiene materials across the berm or across the border to access some of these stranded communities on the other side of the border. So Zatri refugee camp, pretty much, I'm sure most of you would know about Zatri. It's probably the most famous refugee camp in the world. It was established in July 2012 in response to the Syrian crisis. It reached a peak of 120,000 people in 2013-14, although currently it is, the population is about 80,000 people. The camp is managed by UNHCR, who have they're the UN agency with a mandate to represent refugees and displaced people, while, as I mentioned before, the WASH sector response is led by UNICEF. Zatri is, physically it's about the size of a typical suburb, but there's 80,000 people crammed into this space. So as you can imagine, it's a very congested, tight area. And there are 40 plus agencies and partners or NGOs active in Zatri at the moment, all focusing on different aspects to support the community, whether it be education, health, water and sanitation, livelihoods, the whole multitude of programs. So here I've just got 3 photos charting the development of Zatri at its establishment. So the first photo in the top left is from September 2012. Zatri's establishment, population 20,000. This is at the start of the Syrian crisis, and at this time, I think new arrivals were something of the order of 5,000 people per day. So you can imagine how chaotic and the pressure on the government and also the agencies and NGOs to provide shelter and to provide water and sanitation services to these people. The camp quickly grew to 50,000 people in January 2013 and then 100,000 people in March 2013. So 80,000 people were added over a period of 6 months. So this is a huge challenge in terms of mobilizing the resources, both financial but also the technical resources in providing water and sanitation to the people. Again, just some images of the camp. The top left is Zatri not so long ago. You can see the way the camp has evolved and the development. In the foreground is the more congested, older part of the camp, and in the background you can sort of see a more structured, orderly way of planning the camp. The bottom photo is Azraq, which is the second largest camp, and has incorporated a lot of the learnings in terms of site planning, but also water and sanitation provision into its development. And on the right is just indicating some of the typical shelters that are provided to the refugees. So UNICEF doesn't do this alone. we have partnerships with international NGOs to provide the water and sanitation services in the camp. We also have direct relationships with contractors. So given the magnitude of the size of the camp and the size of the population, we actually have partnered with 3 different INGOs, GEN, Oxfam and ACTED, GEN being the Japanese emergency NGO, Oxfam is a large international NGO, and ACTED, another large French NGO. So each of these NGOs work in their respective districts. There are 12 districts in Zatri, and they assist UNICEF in providing water and wastewater services in the camp. So in terms of the water supply operations, what are we currently doing in Zatri? So since establishment, initially when Zatri was established, all water supply was trucked to Zatri. So you can imagine this is an enormous cost. The water has to be sourced from somewhere, from a borehole in the local region, trucked to Zatri and then distributed. So this is very expensive, very hard to manage. Similarly with the wastewater, portable toilets were initially provided, but soon the refugees constructed their own unlined pits to collect the wastewater. UNICEF then had to desludge these pits and truck it to an external wastewater treatment plant. So these aren't sustainable options. So since the camp establishment, UNICEF has actually constructed 3 internal boreholes to provide water specifically for the community in Zatri. Water is then distributed from these boreholes around the camp through a fleet of 50 trucks, which are managed by our partner ACTED. Water is also then delivered to a mix of public and private tanks, about 7,000 tanks in the camp at the moment. So a mixture of communal tanks, but also individual private tanks. And then, of course, we manage the water supply operations as any municipal water authority would. So we have standard operating procedures for managing the water quality and ensuring the quality of that water from source right up until the delivery to refugees. So some of the challenges associated with supplying water. Flooding and road access. The rainy period is generally from November to February in Zatri, and you can see in one of the pictures there, flooding in the camp. The roads are generally unsealed, so they're quickly susceptible to bogging, and then it's hard to transport water to the refugees. We're also vulnerable to truck driver strikes, so managing a large fleet of trucks has many difficulties. And we have had strikes in the past, and you can see some pictures there of how UNICEF managed this. So when we weren't able to truck water to refugees, we had to set up temporary communal water supply points within the camp and then encourage the community to collect their own water. There's a high operational cost, as I mentioned, in managing such a large fleet of trucks, increasing water needs as the camp evolves and increases in population, declining water tables locally, and also responding to the peak drawdown period associated with irrigation in the local area. Ensuring equity of supply, which is extremely important, as we need to make sure that the most vulnerable in any community are able to access water safely. So the disabled, women and children, and so on. And also we need to manage concerns from the community over chlorination of water. In terms of the wastewater operations, we have currently constructed what's called the Phase 1 network, which consists of over 2,700 septic tanks, essentially, large concrete tanks, which serve a household of up to 5 people. So these tanks collect the wastewater from houses, and the tanks are then desludged by trucks and transported to an on-site wastewater treatment plant. We have an on-site wastewater treatment plant that was built and managed by the Water Authority Jordan with support from UNICEF. It has a capacity of about 3,600 cubic meters per day, and it has twin trains, one trickling filter and the other MBR technology. And then the treated wastewater is used for irrigation of the surrounding croplands. So some of the challenges, again, for the current wastewater operations, a high operational cost, again, managing a fleet of trucks and the drivers, changing wastewater characteristics in terms of the volume and strength that we're receiving in the septic tanks, wastewater treatment plant performance, capacity and bottlenecks in terms of how the treatment plant responds to the changing wastewater characteristics, and the large network of staff required to actually monitor and make sure that the operations are working effectively. And I've just included a picture there of a flooding septic tank. So there's actually a septic tank that's buried in that picture, typically 900 millimeters below surface. If it's not desludged within time, it starts to overflow, and you can see some of the wastewater is percolating into the ground. The two pipes are how we desludge the tank. So a desludging truck will park next to this tank, insert the hose into the pipes and pump out the tank's contents. So in terms of community mobilisation, which is community stakeholder and engagement, this is very important to how UNICEF and indeed all camp actors operate in the camp. We have a cash for work scheme where we encourage our contractors and our operations contractors to employ Syrians in the provision of services in the camp. We also have a team that's disseminating education messages to the community in terms of hygiene promotion but also water conservation. We have formed WASH committees with the Syrians to provide a feedback mechanism so the Syrians can then provide information back to the partners about how they're operating and where we can improve things. And I've just included a picture at the top there. You can see it looks like a 2 cubic metre concrete tank. So this is one of the style of sludge holding tanks or septic tanks that have been installed. And we've installed about 2,700 of these in the camp. And in the bottom, you can just see some children sheltering in the shade of a fence. They're actually logging into the Wi-Fi network for the officers in UNICEF. So you can see it's a real challenge to make sure that we provide services to all in the camp. So why are we building water and wastewater networks? So the first thing is cost effectiveness. The longer the Syrian crisis goes on, the harder it is to obtain funds to sustain the operations in the camp. And in this chart, you can just see on the y-axis we have the annual operational cost, and on the x we have time. So when the camp was established, we were operating at about $15 million per year or plus to provide water and wastewater services to the camp. So this is full trucking water into the camp and trucking wastewater out of the camp. We then moved to phase 2, which is the middle part of the chart, where we've constructed boreholes in the camp and constructed an internal wastewater treatment plant. And we've just started phase 2 construction now, where we'll complete a full municipal scale water and wastewater network in the camp, which will ultimately reduce operational costs by 66%. But it's not all about operational costs. We have to take action anyway. From a public health and safety point of view, to make sure that we control the risk of waterborne diseases. We need to make sure that we protect the environment in terms of wastewater disposal, and we need to make sure we have equitable supply of services. So I've just got some pictures down below showing some of the unlined pits and wastewater running over the surface in the camp. This is something that we can't accept, so we had to take action in constructing a network to control this. So I'll just quickly move through, but phase 1 is largely complete. We've essentially constructed a primary distribution network within the camp, linking the 3 internal boreholes to 9 distribution reservoirs. Phase 2 will actually take water from these distribution reservoirs and pump water directly to the household level. And I have an example of 2 types of tanks that we've constructed in the camp, concrete and also a more conventional corrugated iron tank. In terms of the wastewater system, we're actually installing a non-conventional sewer system, meaning that the sludge holding tanks that we've installed act as septic tanks initially. They intercept the solids settle out, and then the solids free or the liquid fraction of wastewater continues on through the non-conventional sewer network. Phase 2 will connect to the solid settling tanks and take the solids free effluent through to the wastewater treatment plant. This is important as it allows us to construct a sewer network at shallower grades. We don't need to construct at grades to ensure gravity flow as you would for a wastewater containing solids. And it also allows us to keep the pipe size small. So this is an important cost consideration, but it's also easier to construct in a congested environment such as Zatri. So phase 2, as I mentioned, has just commenced. We're constructing over 400 kilometres of water network and 300 kilometres of wastewater network. This is important because it gives you an idea of the municipal scale infrastructure that is being constructed at Zatri, which is quite unique for a refugee camp. In terms of the delivery methodology, our most important partnership is with the government, the Ministry of Water and Irrigation. and Water Authority Jordan. So we have formed a technical task force together with our colleagues from the government, and this has been particularly important in agreeing on standards specific to the Zatri context. As being such a congested environment, we can't follow conventional standards for water and wastewater, so we have together jointly developed standards specific to Zatri. Our main donors are KfW, USA, DFID and Canada, and there's a whole host of stakeholders that we need to manage, including the community, the NGOs, the individual contractors, camp security, SRAD, and UNHCR. Now we are delivering this project through a standard FIDIC Red Book contract. So UNICEF has engaged GTEC in partnership with CEC to act as the engineer, and we've engaged mid-contracting as the construction contractor. So I'll just wrap up quickly now. But so the way forward, what happens once we construct these networks? So at the moment, the vision is that we need to develop an operation or a board that will own the assets that have been constructed in Zatri and engage an operations contractor to operate the networks long term. So to facilitate this, we are currently undertaking a study or about to launch a study to review how existing refugee camps managed internationally in Lebanon, in Jordan. How can we engage the private sector and how can we engage the community in providing these operations services? How can we recover costs in terms of water and power costs from the operational costs that we have? And then finally, linking the asset owner to the donor and removing UNICEF as being the middleman for receiving funds and passing it on to the contractor. So final slide, just lessons learned. Probably the strongest lesson is strong relationships and coordination with the government are critical. As I mentioned, particularly in negotiation of the camp-specific water and wastewater specifications. It is important to look for and promote complementary opportunities. So for example, livelihood schemes for employing Syrian refugees, but also crop irrigation using the wastewater treatment plant effluent. It's important to think long-term and strategically early. UNHCR have completed studies of refugee camps around the world which indicate that camps on an average have a lifespan of 17 years. So given that context, it's not sustainable to truck water and wastewater for 17 years. So it's important to look at cost-effective solutions up front. The next point is refugee camps quickly evolve into towns. So Zatri is a town. It's 80,000 people, designed for 100,000 people, and it needs services, as you would expect in a town, to be able to provide water and wastewater services both equitably, but also safely. And finally, when focusing on a refugee camp, it's also important to focus on the community around the refugee camp to avoid creating islands. So while a lot of money and a lot of focus is being focused on Zatri, what about the surrounding communities? They also need to receive investment to provide water and wastewater services. So with that, thank you very much, and I welcome any questions.
We have room for one question, because just let me use the time for a question. So,
There's a cunning plan.
please. Quick one, please.
Based on your experience of dealing with solid waste systems at the camp, do you recommend to implement such kind of system where it's needed, where the conventional, where the investment cost of conventional system is a challenge? My second question, is there any relation between the importance of water or wastewater towards construction in the camp and the risk of groundwater contamination under the camp, or there's no potential activity of such kind of contamination?
Sure. So just on the first point in terms of a non-conventional sewer system, it's unusual technology, I guess, but it's not unheard of. It's commonly used wherever you have high or rocky ground where it's hard to excavate, where you have flat ground where it's very hard to achieve the gradients required for conventional sewers. And it has been installed in a number of small towns around the world, and also such facilities like mining camps. In this context, it made sense to use because of the flat topography of Zatri, but also the congested nature of Zatri. So to follow a conventional sewer would involve very large, deep trenches next to 80,000 people and a number of wastewater pump stations to lift the sewage to its final destination. So I think it's really dependent on the context, but it should be considered more than it is, I believe. It does have its own risk in that because you're dealing with such low gradients in a solids-free system, if solids do get into that system, you're at risk of having blockage and a higher maintenance costs associated to maintain the system. The second point was about environmental contamination. And that was certainly a key driver for installing the network that we have. It became apparent that having the community construct their own unlined pits, which would then collect wastewater, the wastewater would then percolate into the ground. So it's not controlled, it doesn't follow environmental regulation. And while the aquifer is 300 metres below the surface, certainly it is not something that we should be promoting. So firstly, constructing phase 1 network, which was a network of septic tanks, has allowed us to control wastewater and stop it percolating into the ground. And we've actually seen an increase in wastewater collected of about 122%, indicating that we are now trapping and collecting wastewater much more effectively than we were before we constructed the network.
Thank you. If you excuse me, because we have 2 more presentations and we only have 25 minutes for lunch. If you want to have lunch, what you want to say, we can go on. You want to go to lunch? Okay, thank you, Mr. Sir. Our next distinguished speaker is Gusenberger. He's from GTZ. He will be lecturing us on GTZ partnering for the group water and sanitation provision in Jordan. He's a technical advisor for decentralized wastewater management for adaptation to climate change. His background is an environmental engineer with years working experience in development water and wastewater management. He has technical science as an advisor of GTZ, and he has experience in the consulting sector, including projects, acquisition and management in many countries, Zambia, Albania, Vietnam, Kenya, Peru, and Nicaragua. And his research into decentralized resource management, close relation with people, scaling up sanitation services. So we'd like to have Mr. Jens Gusenberger to have 15 minutes, please.
Yes, thank you for the introduction. I would like to present today about the German Development Corporation, GIZ, as one of the organizers. As one of the partners of this conference, and providing you with an overview about what GIZ is and what GIZ is doing, particularly in the water sector here in Jordan. I will start with a general introduction of the GIZ, followed by presenting the GIZ activities in Jordan, and then going into more detail on the water portfolio, and to end with a presentation of a particular project that we are currently implementing in Jordan. So GIZ is not directly a German government organization. It's a private enterprise under private law, but GIZ is owned by the Federal Republic of Germany, and it supports the objectives of the German government. GIZ is basically doing technical cooperation by means of advisory services on behalf of the German government based on bilateral agreements between Germany and the partner countries. So it's not a funding agency, unlikely or different from the KfW Development Bank, but focusing on advisory services. But in certain projects, GIZ is providing grants, especially for piloting activities. As an advisory service, GIZ's main instruments are national and international staff, development workers and integrated experts, plus consultants. Some facts and figures about the business of GIZ. GIZ operates in Germany, or headquartered in Germany in more than 130 countries, with a business volume of approximately 2 billion euro a year. And its main commissioning party is the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, the BMZ, with a share of 80%, but it's also partly commissioned by other parties like the European Union. GIZ has approximately 17,000 employees worldwide, out of which 3,000 are based in Germany, 12,000 national staff, and approximately 1,000 development advisors and 1,000 integrated and returning experts. Here you can see a map about the GIZ offices around the globe. You see it's pretty much covered except North America and Australia. Okay, now I would like to focus on GIZ in Jordan. Here you see an overview about the different portfolios and intervention areas GIZ is working on in Jordan. The biggest portfolio in Jordan is the water portfolio with an overall budget in 2016 of 46 million euro, followed by the waste portfolio with a budget of 38 million and the employment portfolio with a budget of 28 million euro a year. Other intervention areas are the environment and climate sector, education, and financial systems. Here you can see a development of the portfolio, of the GIZ portfolio in Jordan during the last years. You can see a dramatic increase in the annual expenditure. This is mainly due to the Syrian conflicts and the refugee influx into Jordan. So Germany is providing lots of funds, especially in the water sector, to support Jordan with this refugee influx due to the Syrian crisis. Okay, coming now to the different portfolios of the GIZ in Jordan. As I said, the largest one is the water portfolio, and GIZ is working on topics like water resources management, water supply and sanitation, energy for water, water and agriculture, vocational training, as well as decentralized wastewater and sludge management. The main objective of the water portfolio is to promote efficient and sustainable management of water resources and to present some impacts that were achieved during the last months and years. For example, the water resource planning and participatory approaches to reduce groundwater abstraction were improved. Utility performance and service quality was optimized, benefiting 2.5 million persons in Jordan. Sanitary facilities were rehabilitated, benefiting 24,000 students in public double shift schools, and the irrigation efficiency in the highlands in Jordan Valley was improved. 1,700 imams and waiters were trained on water conservation, reaching out to 3 million believers. It's a kind of an awareness campaign. And the Jordanian government, or especially the ministry and the water authority, is supported in the implementation of the decentralized wastewater management policy. In the environmental and climate sector, GIZ works on environmental governance, biodiversity, climate policy, and renewable energy and energy efficiency, as well as urban transport, with the objective of supporting effective environmental governance for the protection of natural resources, climate mitigation, and climate adaptation. I'm not going into further details here. In the waste sector, GIZ works on municipal waste collection, disposal and recycling, as well as capacity development, with the overall objective of improving municipal solid waste management services in selected communities. So it's basically doing capacity development on pilot level. In the employment sector, GI works on labor market policies, employability, placement, retention, promotion of women, as well as the cooperation with public and private sector and civil society, with the objective of supporting the improvement of vocational training qualifications and the employment situation. Finally, in the education sector, GIZ works on academic education and scholarship programs, high school education, primary school education, and sports for development. And the objective is to simply support education on different levels. Oh, there's one more. So in the financial systems sector, GIZ works on international policy exchange, national strategy development, awareness raising, and piloting digital financial services with the private sector, with the objective of supporting financial inclusions and access to remittances. Yeah, after giving a general overview about the GIZ and GIZ Jordan, I would like now to focus on the water portfolio of GIZ in Jordan. GIZ follows a multi-thematic approach in the water sector, starting on the micro level, working on governance and participation, then in the area of water supply and sanitation, energy for water, water and agriculture, and sectoral vocational training. In the area of governance and participation, we support strategy and policy development and implementation on central level, strengthening water resource allocation and strategic planning, as well as institutionalizing participatory approaches. In the area of water supply and sanitation, we try to support the increase of the technical and economic performance of water utilities, support the commercialization of utility services, as well as reducing non-revenue waters by advising water companies in Jordan, and support decentralized approaches, for example, in the area of wastewater management. In the subsector of energy related to water, we work on a countrywide energy assessment, piloting energy efficiency projects, developing business models with the private sector, and support the integration of renewable energies in the water sector. In the area of agriculture related to water, we are working on empowering farmers to manage their water distribution and retail, increasing the irrigation efficiency, and to promote the use of marginal water sources in irrigation with a focus on treated wastewater. Finally, in the intervention area of sectoral vocational training, we develop training concepts for water institutions and water utilities. We do technical capacity building for operators, and we train male and female plumbers to reduce water losses on household level. Here you can see an overview of the different water projects in the water portfolio. The dark blue boxes and columns are ongoing projects. There's a total of 9 projects. And the light blue on your right side, these are projects that are currently under preparations. So there will be a total of 13 projects very soon. Each project is headed by a team leader and supported by a couple of national and international advisors. And in parallel, there's an administrative and financial unit that is supporting the different projects in admin and finance issues. Yeah, as you have seen, also for the GIZ portfolio as a whole, also the water portfolio is increasing in terms of budget and staff, and this is also in order to react on the refugee influx that is created due to the Syrian crisis, and also as there's certain budgets coming from the German government working, for example, on climate change adaptation and mitigation. So there's a steady increase of the water portfolio in terms of project staff and funding. Yeah, here there's an overview about construction measures that are currently going on or that are planned in the water sector. So for example, we will pilot 2 decentralized wastewater treatment and reuse facilities in the close future. Another pilot project includes the construction of co-digestion unit for sludge with food waste. Sanitary facilities are being rehabilitated in 9 schools. Another decentralized wastewater treatment plant is going to be constructed at a public school. Drinking water networks are rehabilitated. Mosques are retrofitted with rainwater harvesting systems, cisterns and grey water systems. Sanitary facilities are also rehabilitated at different mosques, and the branch office of the water company in Mafraq is renovated. So, as I said in the beginning, GIZ is not focusing on providing funding, but it's rather on advisory services. But these kind of infrastructure or investments in infrastructure are basically to pilot certain technologies or approaches. Yeah, coming to an end, I would like to present a little bit more details about one of the ongoing 9 projects. The project is called Decentralized Wastewater Management for Adaptation to Climate Change, and this is also the project where I personally work in. It's commissioned by the German Federal Ministry for Economic Collaboration and Development, BMZ, and it has a duration of 5 years. And the implementing partners are the Ministry of Water and Irrigation, the water authorities, and Jordanian universities. The objectives of the program are to improve capacities in decentralized wastewater management reuse on a countrywide level, to develop and integrate decentralized wastewater treatment and reuse into the national water strategy, and to demonstrate good practices for decentralized treatment and reuse based on pilot projects again. Yeah, these objectives are broken down into different outputs that come with certain indicators. So our first output is to improve the capacities for treatment and reuse, and the indicators for this output are to increase the wastewater reuse in terms of quantity, to train stakeholders in the sector in terms of or in regard to decentralized wastewater management and reuse. A second output would be the construction of decentralized wastewater treatment and reuse pilot systems with the indicator to develop a business model for the sustainable operation of the system. And a third output is to integrate measures for adaptation to climate change into the national water policy. And in this regard, we are developing concepts and action plans for decentralized wastewater management and climate change adaptation measures. Yeah, yes. Talking about pilot projects, we are just preparing 2 pilot projects. One is a medium-scale modular decentralized wastewater treatment plant that will be constructed in Wadi Hassan in Irbid Governorate. It will consist of a decentralized treatment unit plus the sludge treatment to treat the sludge that is generated within the system and at an existing wastewater treatment plant, a centralized one. The effluent will be reused on-site and at a nearby university. And part of this pilot project is the training of the operator, in that case the Yarmouk Water Company, on operation and maintenance. And the second pilot project is going to be implemented at an eco-lodge in the Dana Biosphere Reserve. It will be a small-scale decentralized wastewater treatment plant, including sludge treatment, and the effluent will be reused within the eco-lodge in order to improve the microclimate, and the captured biogas is used in the kitchen for heating purpose. The technologies that we propose in terms of treatment is pre-treatment in terms of screen grid chambers, buffer tanks as required, followed by primary and secondary treatment in anaerobic modules like anaerobic baffle reactors, digesters, and anaerobic filters, followed by a tertiary treatment in vertical or horizontal flow constructed wetlands, or a combination of both. And the sludge that is generated will be treated in either sludge drying bags, or we will also think in mechanical dewatering. The reuse consists, or the reuse infrastructure consists of storage tanks and irrigation systems for the effluent, as well as some units for the burning of or the utilization of the biogas. Coming to my last slide, apart from piloting, we are also working on preparation for scaling up of these pilots. For this purpose, we developed 2 sizes of generic or standardized decentralized treatment units, and we develop certain tools for the replication of these systems in other locations. So these tools include, for example, a decision support tool that support the project implementer to figure out whether these standardized systems are applicable in a certain area or not. Then we have the generic designs of these 2 systems, including technical drawings, standardized BOQs that only need some minor adaptation during implementation, standardized tender documents, and different manuals on construction, operation, maintenance. These tools will then be demonstrated by means of the 2 pilot projects that we are implementing. And in parallel to these piloting activities, we also develop capacities in terms of training to different stakeholders in the sector in regards to designing or adaptation of the generic designs, construction, operation of the treatment systems. And in parallel, we also have some accompanying measures. We try to work with the government on adapting the existing discharge standards for wastewater treatment plants to adapt them to small-scale systems, and we are also trying to raise some awareness in regards to the need for environmental impact assessments for small-scale systems. With this I would like to come to an end. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have room for one quick
Thank you.
Our last speaker, but by no means least, is Jamil Levy. Is a change from the original program. He's an author, and he's an engineer from Canada. Works in the construction department and environmental impacts of construction and demolition waste. Particularly, he is interested in soil waste management, and he will be speaking about an innovative methodology of debris recycling in damaged districts. So, thank
you. Thank you for the presentation. I'm going to talk to you about our paper called Innovative Rehabilitation Methodology of Recycling Buildings Debris in Damaged Districts. I have actually worked with Dr. Ayman and Dr. Faraz, such great gentlemen, and it was a huge pleasure working with them. Without further ado, it's very important to understand the situation and the post-problems. There has been a civil war in Syria since 2011 that led the invasion of ISIS for more than 10 major cities in Syria and northern Iraq. And when ISIS actually controlled 80,000 square kilometers in both North Iraq and Syria. To fight that invasion and those militias, there have been daily air and artillery strikes that led to the destruction of private and public buildings, destruction of the infrastructures in both Iraq and Syria. For example, the infrastructures, buildings, bridges, water treatment plants, water purification plants, and roads. The damage estimates from the World Bank in 2016 in only 6 major cities in Syria to range from $3.7 to $4.5 billion. And as we see in those pictures in Aleppo and Homs, as we can see, there is almost no intact building, and the destruction have left almost all of the buildings unrepairable and unlivable. So we engineers have to act effectively and efficiently, and we have to find solutions for this dilemma. And we have to exploit the available technologies, and we have to wisely manage this huge amount of rubble. In this slide, I'm going to talk to you about the conventional method, and in the next slide, I'm going to talk to you about the suggested method. Here in this scheme, the conventional methods parameters are represented. We have the damaged districts, and we have landfills, where the rubble is disposed. Imported materials are coming from quarries and factories to replace the already disposed materials, and we have the transportation cost, which we have to minimize. Landfills should be 100 kilometers away from the cities for the further expansion of landfills and for the growth of the cities, and to save our generation, the future generations, from the environmental impact of the landfills and for the contaminations in the landfills. Disposal cost, according to Lenin 2005, is $100 per ton. Can you imagine this number? $100 per ton to dispose 1 ton of rubble. 150 kilometers is assumed for the replacing materials. This number is calculated and used in our calculations depending on the locations of the quarries, factories, and borders and ports in both Iraq and Syria. According to the freight metrics, it's almost $0.1 per ton per kilometer. For 350 kilometers, for the cycle of for the ton of rubble and the replacing materials, it's going to be $32.2 per 1 ton. Here, in this slide, the suggested method, we have the damaged districts illustrated in this scheme with local recycling plants. We suggest to use local recycling plants, and however, we have to import some of the materials because not everything is recyclable. We have $10 per ton for recycling concrete, bricks, and blocks, $11 for transportation concrete. And the most important thing in this suggested method, that this offers jobs for the locals who are forcibly moved and uprooted from their cities and now desperately wanting to reconstruct and revive their cities. And as I said, minimizing the replacing materials and minimizing the transportation cost. It is very important to understand the tonnage percentages. Concrete occupies 95% of the tonnage percentage. Only 4% of steel, 1% between metals and plastics. And according to many references, that more than 90% can be recyclable from the construction and demolition waste. Unfortunately, there are no accurate numbers of the amount of rubble produced from this dilemma and from this turmoil. So we had to come up with a model of 4-story building, 8 apartments in each building, having 300 meters square of living space, 8 people in each apartment. This building would consume 400 cubic meter of concrete and tonnage 960 and 40 tons of steel. If you want to divide 960 by 64, it's going to be 15 tons of concrete per capita, 0.7 tons of steel per capita, and 655,000 kilograms of metal from appliances and so on, which means 82 kilograms per capita. It was stated by the United Nations in the late 2016 that half of Syria's population is affected and uprooted. So as I said, we have to relate the number of affected people to the rubble produced. So if we want to multiply 15 times 9, and by the way, there are 9.5 million Syrian people got affected from this turmoil, and as a result, it is estimated to have 142.5 tons of concrete, 6.65 tons of steel, and 0.75 million tons of metal and plastics. I want to correct myself, 6.65 million tons of steel. So can you imagine this amount of rubble? So we have to wisely manage it and recycle it. One might wonder, how is that possible? It is possible by using the mobile concrete crushers, such as the one represented in the upper right picture, and use temporary plastic and wood recycling plants on public premises. Why public premises? To reduce the cost, and because we want to use these recycling plants on public premises to reduce the rental fees, and for the recycling plants a relatively smaller size. However, for steel and metals, it has to be hauled to the recycling plants because they require bigger recycling plants and more complicated recycling processes. For this particular machine, it is track-mounted and self-propelled. It has the capacity of recycling 363 metric ton per hour. According to our model that has 400 metric meters, it can crush and eat this building in an hour and 15 minutes. So this machine is pretty amazing and efficient. It weighs only 36 tons, and it has the operational dimensions of 15 meters in length, 2.8 meters in width, and 3.5 meters in height. So it can maneuver very easily. And in the scheme down below, the concrete blocks is put in the hopper of the crusher. The next step is crushing and cutting, and there is a magnet separation to separate the steel, the reinforcement steel, and this magnet puts the concrete to the side, and the result is RCA, recycled concrete aggregates, which can be used up to 80% of the original amount of aggregates in new concrete mixes according to ACI, American Cement Institution. The estimates of the conventional method in Syria case. Concrete, as I said, the most tonnage material. If you want to transport it and dispose it, it would cost $19 billion. For steel, almost $1 billion to get rid of this material. For metals and plastics, $206 million. A total of almost $20 billion to dispose and transport those types of rubble. However, in our suggested methodology, concrete, the most tonnage materials, there is $10 to recycle the concrete and $11 for transportation, according to Lennon in 2005. The total is 21. If you want to multiply it by 142.5 million tons, it would have only $3 billion to recycle this amount of rubble. For steel and metal, it is combined because they go through the same recycling process. 15 for recycling per ton, $15, $12 for transportation, $27 in total, and we're going to have only $200 million to recycle metal and steel produced from the rubble, from the destruction of buildings. The total is 3.1 or $3.2 billion, comparing to $20 million. And here one might ask why the plastic is omitted from this table, because the recent researchers say that the recycling of plastics would cost more than producing plastic itself. So in the end, if we want to compare the numbers, as I said, for concrete, and we have to focus on concrete because it's the most tonnage material among all the types of rubble, we have, as I said, $19 billion. For our method is only $3 billion. We have 84% of saving. Metal and plastics, the comparison between only $200 million to recycle and $1 billion to dispose and transport all the way to the landfills. Saving is almost 80%. So we have to consider recycling, and by the way, the saving does not stop here, because the recycling material, the recycled materials would be used and reused, and as we know, metals and steel can be infinitely reused without losing any of its chemical and physical properties. And in the end, merci, danke, thank you, shukran for listening, and time for questions.
Thank you indeed. Do you have any questions?
What is the cost of the machine?
Oh yeah, the cost. The cost is almost $400,000. It is a typical machine. It's one among many types, and I have chosen this as an example because it has been used in North America and in many places, and it has produced good efficiency. Sorry? Not to my knowledge. I don't know. I really don't know. But it was used in North America. Yes.
Please.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sam Khoury from the Construction Products. As an engineer working in, let's say, construction material field, many people we met usually have several concerns about the recycling material or recycled material. And I really need to ask this question: how can you guarantee the integrity of this recycled material? You know, we are not talking about a naturally collapsed area. They were subjected to blast attack, they were subjected to exceptional pressures and temperatures. So how can you really guarantee that this recycled material, whether concrete or steel or plastic, really can be used again in construction?
According to the researchers in North America, they have been recycling concrete slabs. And an RCA, the most tonnage material, as I said, and I'm reiterating myself, you can use up to 80% of the new mixes. However, your question is very important. But if you want to, the concrete is destroyed, but this machine is going to destroy it even further and getting the particles even smaller. And for the properties of the new mixes are exactly the same properties when you're using normal aggregates. I mean, not recycled aggregates. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please join me in thanking all the speakers for a very interesting.
احنا هلا سيشن رقم 4 والمفروض انه عندنا 4 محاضرات. موجود محاضرين وعم ندور على المحاضرين الاخرين. الاخوان تفضلوا. طبعا عم نسال عليكم كنا. اوكي ممتاز. معناها ال4 محاضرين موجودين. فزي ما قلنا عندنا 4 سيشنز، كل سيشن 20 دقيقة. فأنا بقترح إنه يكون المحاضر يعطينا 15 دقيقة تقريبا ويكون 5 دقائق questions and answers. بدنا نحكي بالعربي غالبا لأنه ما فيش حدا أظني ما بيحكيش عربي. أو طبعا ضمن المحاضرة بيكون عربي وإنجليزي، بس يعني بشكل عام بدنا نعتمد اللغة العربية. المحاضر الأول طبعا غني عن التعريف هو الدكتور يوسف مسنات. الدكتور يوسف مسنات حاليا هو بدرس بجامعة فيلادلفيا، بس لديه تاريخ عريق. بدي أذكر منه شغلات بسيطة. من مؤسسي أول كلية هندسة في الأردن اللي هي الجامعة الأردنية. نائب رئيس جامعة مؤتة وعميد كلية الهندسة من 1990 ل 93. مستشار سابق لأمانة العاصمة ووزارة الأشغال ووزارة المياه. رئيس لجنة معادلة الشهادات في نقابة المهندسين سابقا. ونشر 85 بحثا ومقالا في المجلات العلمية والثقافية. وعقد 22 دورة تدريبية في الأردن. اشتغل من سنة 66 ل 67 في وزارة المياه كمهندس جيوتقني. والانترست تبعته سلوب ستابيليتي والدامز ان جنرال. تفضل دكتور يوسف.
تعتبر مشكلة الانزلاقات من الهموم الرئيسية لمهندسي المدنيين بصورة عامة ولمهندسي الهايويز بصورة خاصة. I studied 46 landslides that occurred in the last 40 years in Jordan. And I came to the conclusion that most of the landslide areas were not studied either at all or inadequate site investigations were carried out in these areas. Landslides pose serious threat to human life, serious inconvenience to the public, result in a substantial increase in the cost of the construction of projects, results in a considerable delay in the completion of the projects. بالإضافة إلى الكليمز والدعاوى اللي نتيجة هذه الانزلاقات، هل هي مسؤولية المهندس المستشار المصمم؟ هل هي مسؤولية المقاول وغير ذلك؟ المشكلة بصورة عامة أن المهندس المدني وخصوصاً مهندسو الهايويز يعطون الأهمية satisfying the geometric requirements of the highways. Horizontal alignment, vertical alignment, the balance between cut and fill, and they pay no or little attention to the paleogeological history of the terrain through which the highway will pass. They pay little attention to the geomorphological features. They pay little attention to the engineering geological features of these areas. If adequate site investigations were carried out, most of these landslides could have been averted. Yes, most of these landslides could have been averted. The inadequacy in the site investigations usually is in the volume, scope, distribution, and type of site investigations, or in the misinterpretation of the results of site investigations, or in inadequate and inaccurate testing, either in the field or in the laboratory. Therefore, conclusions from this misinterpretation of the site investigations, whether in the field or in the laboratory, often result in inadequate design. What I mean by inadequate design, both, they don't provide adequate factor of safety against structural failure or against proper functioning of the structure, either structural failure or functional failure of the project. The following are some examples of the engineering works that suffered from slope failures due to inadequate site investigations or improper evaluation of the data gathered from these investigations. They are manifested by the oversimplification of the geological section of the areas affected by tectonic disturbance and old landslides, the use of peak shear strength parameters along pre-existing slip surfaces, and the assumption of adequate drainage conditions in the stability analysis often lead to false and unsafe conclusions concerning the stability of cut slopes. This is quite clear in the following examples of slope failures. The first is about Wadi Sir sewage treatment plant, located about 10 kilometers to the southwest of Wadi Sir town, 20 kilometers to the east of the Jordan Dead Sea Rift. Here we can see the first landslide occurred in September 1993. Because the cut slopes were unsafe, cut slopes 2 horizontal to 1 vertical in colluvial deposits. The lagoons were relocated to a second site, and the cut slopes were flattened 3 horizontal to 1 vertical. Yet another failure occurred on 28th of November 1993. After that, the lagoons were relocated to the third site, and the slopes were cut 4 horizontal to 1 vertical. Yet a failure occurred on the 10th of July 1995. Gabion walls were constructed to stabilize the landslide area. Yet, due to a creep movement and poor geological conditions, poor surface and subsurface drainage conditions, a fourth failure occurred on the 23rd of February 1997. These figures show the breaking down of the gabion walls and the displacement of the gabion wall at the toe of the landslide by about 6 to 9 meters. Amman-Naur-Dissi Highway. The Amman-Naur-Dissi Highway was constructed in 1956. Section 3 of this highway crosses what was designated later as landslide number 4. Several embankment failures occurred between 56 and 64 in this area. It was open to traffic from 58 to 64, but was abandoned after the landslide of 64. After many phases of site investigations, the Ministry of Public Works decided to pass the highway through a route at a higher elevation, which was later designated as the upper alignment, without carrying adequate site investigations along this new alignment. Many landslides occurred along this new route due to the presence of plastic clay marls and purged water at different levels. This resulted in a substantial increase in the cost of construction and in a considerable delay in the completion of the works. This is a section of landslide number 4 along Amman-Naur-Dissi Highway. Also, many landslides occurred along Irbid-Jarash-Amman Highway. This 57-kilometer highway suffered during its construction as well as after its completion from many cut slopes and embankment failures. The last one that occurred about 3 weeks ago. The investigation works that were carried out at the locations of 7 major slides as well as along the route of the highway have indicated that the main causes of the slope failures were the presence of intercalations of weak and water-sensitive plastic clay marls, sandstone formation, and the poor surface and subsurface drainage conditions, daylighting of the wet shale and marl beds with unfavorable dip orientation, placement of high embankment fill on colluvial deposits, and etc. This is a figure of the landslide that occurred due to cut in and daylighting of plastic clay marl. Also, a landslide occurred on the left abutment of Mujib Dam. During the excavation of the left abutment of the roller compacted concrete Mujib Dam, an unexpected landslide occurred that prompted the designer to shift the axis of the dam downstream of its original position. The landslide was due to daylighting of a moderately thick, about 1 meter thick, wet plastic mudstone overlain by loose colluvium that allowed percolation of rainwater towards the mud that was dipping unfavorably out of the cut slope. Here the upper photo shows the scarp of the landslide and the lower photo shows the slip surface along the mud layer. Tafila retaining walls. Retaining walls were constructed on the western side of a major street passing through Tafila town near Wadi Zaid during the first winter season. After their construction, the retaining walls failed by tilting and excessive displacement down the slope. Post-failure investigations indicated that the failure was due to the low bearing capacity of the wet plastic clay marls on which the retaining walls were founded, and to the poor drainage condition and the poor quality of the backfill material behind the retaining walls. The upper photo shows the retaining walls that were tilted and displaced, and the lower photo shows the sliding surfaces and the poor backfill material. Along the Jordan Street, after constructing the Jordan Street as a zone few kilometers before the link with the Swaleh-Jarash Highway, creep movement resulted in the subsidence and cracking of the asphalt surface of the highway. Investigations indicated that the creep movement was due to the placement of high fill on a pre-existing slip surface passing through the moist plastic marl in an area that suffered from an old landslide. Here it shows the shifting to the right-hand side of a section of the highway of the Jordan Street. Kofranja Dam spillway chute. A landslide occurred on the spillway chute of Kofranja Dam on March 17, 2012. Post-failure investigations indicated that the slide was initiated in plastic clay marl near the middle of the spillway chute and was recently excavated due to the absorption of moisture from the preceding rainy months. The percolated water through the jointed rock mass near the top of the spillway excavation affected the colluvial deposits in the lower zone of the spillway chute. Here they estimated in the design that the thickness of the colluvium is between 4 and 6 meters, but it was about 11 to 13 meters thick. Inadequate site investigations. This is the photo of Kofranja spillway chute failure. Observation and monitoring. There are many indicators of the precarious stability of any slope, like emergence of springs or wet spots that didn't exist before, tilting of objects like trunks of trees, electric or telephone poles, development of tension cracks on the slope face, cracking of the civil engineering structures, sudden loss of liquids in septic tanks, distortion in the subsurface, in the surface or alignment of roads, any unexplained change in the alignment of water pipelines, and the displacement of retaining structures. The main features of landslide areas. After studying 46 landslides, this is a frequency distribution of the geological formations. Most of the landslide occurred in Ajloon group, 24% in Kurnob sandstone formation, about 20% in recent deposits, and about 6.5% in the Palka group in the B1 formation. Frequency distribution of the dominating materials in the landslide areas. In most of these landslide areas are dominated by wet plastic clay marls, 56%, 22% shales, 13% colluvium, and 8.7% other deposits. Frequency distribution of the 68 samples from the landslide areas. Most of them, about 62%, clays of high plasticity, 22% clays of low to moderate plasticity, and the rest clays and silts. This is frequency distribution according to the total annual rainfall. Most of the landslides occurred in the seasons where the rainfall intensity exceeded 750 millimeters. Landslide risk management. Here, the treatment options, the common options for dealing with the landslides and risk acceptance when the abandonment of the site to avoid landslide hazards is practically not feasible, or when the preventive measures of a potential landslide entail prohibitive cost, then the option is to reduce risk by some mitigation measures that mainly include changes in the geometry of the slope by flattening, benching, and loading, or placing buttress fill at the toe of the slope. Surface and subsurface drainage measures, increasing the shear resistance of the slope material by chemical or mechanical means, protection of the cut slopes from weathering and erosion by the use of geomats and grassing of slopes. In case of highway embankments, resting on weak foundations and suffering from subsidence and creep movement, partial shifting of the highway alignment to a more stable ground could be the option. When the treatment to increase the factor of safety when the treatments are technically or economically not feasible, then the site cannot be practically abandoned, then the monitor collapse policy could be adopted, as was the case with many areas that were deemed to be at marginal stability along Amman-Jarash-Irbit highway. This figure shows the relationship between the cost of monitoring and mitigation measures and the hazard intensity. The higher the cost, the lower is the hazard intensity, especially in the uniform ground conditions. This shows the relationship between the probability of sliding and the magnitude of loss. These are divided into tolerable zones, marginal zones, and intolerable zones. Construction regulations, I classified the areas for further construction into 4 groups: prohibitive areas where no construction activities are allowed, restricted areas where construction activities are only allowed under the condition of extreme necessity, regulated areas where construction are allowed after conducting adequate investigations, and allowed areas where construction activities are allowed without restrictions. The classification depends on the hazard intensity, cost of treatment, and resilience of community. I mean by the resilience of the community, the ability of community of self-management and recovery. In the prohibitive areas, the hazard intensity is high, cost of treatment moderate to high, resilience of community is low. Then restricted, then regulated, and in the allowed, the hazard intensity is low, cost of treatment is low, resilience of the community is high, and thank you very much. أنا مش سامع السؤال حتى أجاوب. لو تعطيها السماعة وأنا بجاوب من هون. معها سماعة. يعني لأنه أنا سمعي بدون مؤاخذة ضعيف شوي، فيعني لو قربي شوي وتسمعين الصوت كويس.
يعطيك العافية اسم المهندس السابع. حضرتك بلشت المحاضرة قلت 45 موقع حضرتك درستهم بالمواقع إنه تقارير فحص الطب بتكون خطأ. طب إحنا بالموقع سواء مقاول سواء استشاري بنشتغل في المشروع بناء على تقرير فحص الطب اللي بحدد لنا عمق الحفر وكيف نصمم الأساسات وكيف ننفذها. طب ما في رقابة على هاي المكاتب بتعمل فحص التربة وكيف نعرف إنه هم تقاريرهم صح ولا لا؟ كيف نحدد؟
يعني بقدر أفهم سؤال تقييم إذا كنا في موقع معين تقييم هذا الموقع من حيث الديسابيلتي هذا هو السؤال؟
إنه 45 موقع تم
أنا درست 46 موقع
46 موقع
نعم
وقلت إنه تقارير فحص التربة بتكون مش صح تقارير فحص التربة المكاتب بتكون مش صح
بعض المواقع معظم المواقع اللي حصل فيها الاتصاص ما عمل فيها سايت انفستيجيشن ما عمل او وبعض اللي عمل فيها سايت انفستيجيشن كان فيها بس انتربريتيشن اوف ذا ديتا
اكيد انتربريتيشن
انا في كثير من المواقع بامكان الانجينير جيولوجيست يستطيع من الجيومورفولوجيكال فيتشرز يقول هنا حاصل all landscape.
مش كل المواقع بتكون فيها خبرة اللي يقدر يقيم بس من الفيتشرز.
ولهذا في المشاريع الكبرى لازم يكون في تيم من السيفل انجينير من الجيولوجيست ومن الانجينير الجيولوجيست.
أنا المشروع الضخم اشتغلت وما كان في جيولوجيست انجينير.
وين؟
ما فيش أحكي اسم بس ما كان في مكون من
في المناطق المعروفة إنها has a paleogeological history of disturbance of lowland slides, high cut, daylighting of wet plastic clay mark, أو daylighting of shale mix, أو mud, أو high fill من colluvial material. لازم يكون في engineering geologist, geotechnical engineer.
يعني features اللي حضرتك قلتها المفروض تكون نون للكل على أساس إذا اكتشفنا إحنا في الموقع واحدة منها الشغلة
بالضبط. في ناس مقسمين في أسئلة عفوا الفلاش تبعي قبل ما ولا ما
هلا بيجوا بتقولوا لك يا بلاش اخربه. البرزنتيشن الثانية قدمها السيد بوعايشة علاوة بوعايشة علاوة من الجزائر الشقيقة. عنوانها Numerical Analysis of Slope Stability During Earthquakes Case of Earth Dam. السيد بوعايشة ريسيرشر في National Center for Studies and Integrated Researches of Buildings in Algeria. هو طالب PhD at University of خضر محمد البسكرة في الجزائر في الجيوتكنيكال انجينيرينج، وعنده شهادة طبعا الماجستير في الجيوتكنيكال انجينيرينج برضه من بسكرة يونيفرسيتي، واهتماماته بالشالو فاونديشن ريتيننج وولز والسلوب ستابيليتي. تفضل.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد، سيدي الرئيس، سادة الحضور، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. يشرفني أن أتقدم إليكم بالشكر الجزيل على أن منحتمونا فرصة المشاركة في هذا المؤتمر بتقديم بحثنا الذي هو بعنوان Numerical Analysis of Slope Stability During Earthquakes Case of Earth Dam، يعني نمذجة عددية لحالة سد ترابي تحت تأثير القوى الزلزالية. موضوع بحثنا هذا يرتكز على 5 عناصر أساسية: مقدمة حول أنواع الانهيارات التي قد تتعرض لها السدود الترابية تحت تأثير الزلازل. ثانياً، مختلف الطرق والحسابات التي يعتمد عليها في حساب استقرارية السدود الترابية. ثالثاً، نظرة عامة على برنامج الحساب فلاك 2D. رابعاً، نمذجة العددية لسد ترابي أثناء تعرضه لزلزال ومختلف النتائج المتحصل عليها. خامساً، خاتمة التي تحصلنا عليها من خلال دراستنا هذه. هناك 4 ظواهر وانهيارات أساسية قد تؤثر على استقرارية السدود الترابية أثناء الزلازل. أول ظاهرة ليكفيكيشن فايلر، أي ظاهرة تميع التربة، والناتجة أساساً على اختيار نوعية تربة السد أثناء الدراسة، والتي تتسبب في انهيار السد عن طريق التشوهات الحجمية. ثانياً، التشققات الطولية longitudinal cracks في المنطقة العلوية للسد. ثالثاً، تشققات عرضية التي سببها أساساً الهبوطات التفاضلية. ورابعاً، انزلاق كتل ترابية التي سببها تزايد ضغط الماء داخل السد. عبر التاريخ سجل الباحثون العديد من الانهيارات والتشققات تحت تأثير الزلازل. أول حالة كانت تقريباً على مستوى سد سانتا باربارا في الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية. نلاحظ انهيار كلي للسد، وقد أرجع الباحثون على أن ضعف الخصائص الميكانيكية للتربة كانت سبباً رئيساً في الانهيار الكلي للسد. ثاني حالة كانت والتي كانت هي الفيصل والأساس في تقدم البحوث الأمريكية في هذا المجال، ألا وهو سد سان فرناندو السفلي عام 1971. نلاحظ انزلاق كتل ترابية كبيرة بسبب ظاهرة تميع التربة. ثالث حالة التي كانت عندنا في الجزائر على مستوى سد قدارة، والذي يبعد تقريبا 30 كيلومتر على مركز الهزة الأرضية لزلزال بومرداس 2003. نرى ظهور بعض التشققات في أعلى السد وفي جانبه، لكن الحمد لله السد بقي مستقرا أثناء هذا الزلزال. رابع حالة على مستوى السد في جنوما في اليابان 2011 انهيار كلي للسد، وذلك راجع لقوة شدة الزلزال. استقرارية سدود ترابية تحت تأثير الزلازل تحسب وتقدر حالتها بالعديد من الطرق الحسابية. هناك 3 طرق رئيسية: الطرق التقريبية والبسيطة، نذكر منها بسيدوستاتيك أناليسيس، طريقة نيومارك 1965، سارما 1973، مقديسي سيد 1977، ومينيرو 1979. ثاني الطرق وهي الطرق التجريبية، هناك 3 طرق التي تعتمد أساسا على حساب الإزاحات الأفقية للسدود. هناك 3 طرق: الأولى جونسون 1990، الثانية سويس جود 1995، والثالثة طريقة بيرو 1997. هناك الطرق العددية والتي تنقسم إلى قسمين رئيسيين. هناك برامج تعتمد على حساب الإجهادات الكلية والتي فيها طريقتين: equivalent linear analysis and fully non-linear analysis، والأخرى التي تعتمد على حساب الإجهادات النسبية. هناك 3 طرق: fully coupled codes and semi-coupled codes and incomplete codes. بالنسبة للبرنامج الذي اعتمدنا عليه في دراستنا هو برنامج فلاك 2D المطور من طرف شركة إيتاسكا الأمريكية، والذي يعتمد على طريقة الطرق المحدودة في نديفيرس ميثود. البرنامج له ميزات خاصة، منها الدقة في الحساب، الكثير من نماذج سلوكات التربة، ويعمل على حساب الترابط والتفاعل بين التربة والهياكل. بالنسبة للنمذجة العددية، تم اختيار سد ترابي بنواة غضارية، حيث يبلغ ارتفاع السد حوالي 40 متر وارتفاع منسوب المياه حوالي 36 متر، وذلك باستخدام برنامج فلاك. وقمنا بالتركيز في هذه الدراسة البسيطة على استخراج منحنيات الإزاحات الأفقية لسد فارغ، والحالة الثانية سد مملوء بالماء أثناء تعرضه للزلزال، وأيضا توزيع وانتشار اللدونة والتشوهات القصية في السد. لدراسة استجابة السد قمنا باختيار نموذج لتسارعات زلزال لوما بريتا في كاليفورنيا، تمثل قيمة التسارع القصوى تقريبا 0.17 جي في مدة تقدر ب40 ثانية. النتائج المتحصل عليها في هذه الدراسة: الشكلين المقابلين يمثلان تأثير القوة الزلزالية على توزيع اللدونة والتشوهات القصية. نلاحظ من خلال الشكل الأول أن اللدونة والتشوهات تتمركز أساسا في الجهة العلوية والجانب الأيسر من جهة الماء، مما يدل على خطر عدم استقرار هذه المناطق خاصة أثناء الزلازل. الشكل المقابل يمثل الإزاحات الأفقية القصوى على الخط الشاقولي للسد انطلاقا من الأساس. نلاحظ زيادة معتبرة في هذه الإزاحة مع الارتفاع، كما نلاحظ الفرق الواضح والجلي بين دراسة السد بدون ماء وأيضا مع تفاعل السد والماء. نفس الشيء بالنسبة للإزاحات الأفقية في قمة السد، وخاصة حالة تفاعل السد مع الماء نلاحظ اختلاف معتبر بينه وبين السد وهو فارغ، أي حالة السد وهو فارغ يعني في نهاية أشغال، وعند امتلاء السد نلاحظ فرق كبير في الإزاحة الأفقية من خلال حساب الإزاحة الأفقية في قمة السد، يعني فيه فرق كبير ما بين السد وهو فارغ والسد وهو مملوء. الشكل المقابل يمثل تأثير زيادة تسارعات زلزالية على توزيع اللدونة في السد. كلما زاد التسارع زاد انتشار مناطق اللدونة خاصة في قمة السد والجانب الأيسر من الماء، مما يؤكد خطر عدم استقرارية هذه المناطق. بدراسة استجابة السد لتأثير القوى الزلزالية لاحظنا ما يلي: تأثير ترابط الماء مع السد يؤدي إلى إزاحات أفقية معتبرة انطلاقا من الأساس إلى قمة السد. توزيع وانتشار اللدونة والتشوهات القصية يتمركز دائما في قمة السد. والجهة اليسرى من جهة الماء. كما أن النمذجة العددية لتفاعل التربة مع الماء منصوح بها دائما في مثل هذه الحالات، لأنها تأخذ دائما بعين الاعتبار حالة جريان الماء داخل السد. نشكركم على حسن انتباهكم، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله. نعم. في أي مجال، في أي نقطة بالضبط الاقتراح؟ شوف، احنا بحكم أننا طلاب دكتوراه، يعني لسنا باحثين يعني متفوقين ويعني في المجال هذا. احنا كان همنا الوحيد هو تحليل السد الترابي أثناء الزلزال مع الماء. هذا الأمر يعني لحد الآن قليل وين تجد برامج يعني تهز كما نقولوا تحمل في الحسبان ثلاث حالات. هذو سد تعرف يعني يعني السد عادة ما يكون كبير مع الماء ومع زلزال. يعني هذه ثلاث أمور باش تبرمجها في برنامج يعني يعتمد على طريقة العناصر المحدودة والعناصر الفروق المحدودة فينيت ديفرنس ميثود أو فينيت إليمنت ميثود، يعني صعب جدا لحد الآن. البحوث يعني احنا هذه مقدمة بالنسبة لهذا البحث، ليس يعني اقتراح ولا فيه مثلا مشاكل ولقينا الحل لها، لكن مجرد أنه شغل كما نقولوا بالفرنسية une validation du programme، validation of program FLAC في هذا المجال.
البرزنتيشن الثالثة برضو بيقدمها أخ من الجزائر الشقيقة، هو زميله للسيد بوعيشة، اسمه السيد رفا سيد علي. التايتل of the presentation Cyclic lateral response of piles in dry sands, effect of pile slenderness. برضو السيد رفا researcher في نفس المعهد National Center for Studies and Integrated Researches of Building in Algeria، وبرضه هو PhD student at University of Science and Technology هواري بومدين USTHB في الجزائر بالجيوتكنيكال انجينيرينج، ولديه طبعا حاصل على شهادة الMSc في الجيوتكنيكال انجينيرينج من نفس الجامعة. تفضل.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. بدء أحمد الله عز وجل على أن وفقنا للاجتماع مع إخواننا وأشقائنا، كما نشكر نقابة المهندسين الأردنيين التي أتاحت لنا هذه الفرصة. نشكرها أيضا على المجهودات المبذولة، وذلك من خلال جمع الباحثين المختلف الدول لتقديم ما لديهم من بحوث. I'm Rafa Sidali, researcher at National Center for Studies and Integrated Researches of Building. The main mission of this center is to provide the Algerian Housing Ministry with technical solution to construction problem that is facing. The center is divided in 4 divisions: structure division, building efficiency, materials, and geotechnical division. One of our research projects in the geotechnical division was the analysis of monopile foundation and the lateral cyclic load. And today, I would like to present some of our findings in this topic, namely the effect of pile slenderness on the behavior of monopile foundation and the lateral cyclic load. Monopile foundations are frequently used to support structures such as electrical tower transmissions, bridge abutments, offshore wind turbines, and low-rise buildings. These structures usually experience lateral cyclic and dynamic loading generated either by earthquakes, blasts, wind, and waves, and current. The response to lateral loads of monopile foundation differs from foundation which is composed by 2 piles or more. 2 piles or more, indeed. As you can see in the picture, if you have 2 piles, they work as push-pull couple. One pile will be subjected to compression, another pile will be subjected to attraction, and you have a little bit of bending of piles. However, for foundation composed by only 1 pile, it will be only subjected to bending, and so we have to study that deeply. The stress force mobilized immediately after the lateral load is applied are depicted below. You have shear drag at 2 sides of the pile, and you have total pressure in the front of the pile. Moreover, when the pile is subjected to lateral cyclic load, there is creation of a gap between the soil and the pile, and there is phenomena which is known as cyclic soil degradation. The soil degradation appears in soil, as you can see, by a gap between the pile. To study this effect, to analyze and estimate the displacement of pile and calculate efforts that are generated by lateral loads, many calculation methods have been set in literature. Those methods are either analytic or numeric. That needs the use of computer program to solve the problem. The widely used method to analyze pile and the lateral cyclic loads, there is a method, PY curve method. In this method, we model the pile as linear element and soil is modeled as spring element. The behavioral laws of those springs depends on depth, soil stiffness, pile deflection, and number of cycles. And you can find the definition of those behavioral laws in literature like Longs and Vanistas or Desais, or in national codes like the French code Fascicule 62 titre 5 or the American code API. 2 other methods are also used, the finite element method or the finite difference method. In this method, the pile and soil are modeled together, and the model can be either 2-dimensional or 3D dimensional. However, for the 2D dimensional, some adjustment should be made to the model. In our studies, first we have calibrated a model according to a loading test which have been made by Roscoe in 2004 in Laboratoire Central des Ponts et Chaussées. In this model, the prototype pile was 14.6 meters with diameter of 0.72 meters, and embedded with 12 meters in what do we call it? I forgot. In dense Fontainebleau sand. The container was 40 by 14.6 meters with rigid sides. The loading program consisted of loading the pile to a load of 960 kilonewton and unloading it to 0 kilonewton. As I stated earlier, the problem of single pile subjected to lateral loads is 3D problem. However, to use 2D simulation, De Jong in 2008 suggested to model the pile in 2D with plane strain modelization and divide the axial and flexural stiffness of the pile by 3 times its diameter. This suggestion was based on the findings of Brahms in 1964, who stated that the piles would develop passive pressure, a width of up to 3 times their width. In our numerical model, we have used the software Plaxis 2D. The pile was modeled by beam element. The connection between the soil and the pile was made by means of interface elements. The soil was modeled by 15 nodes triangular element. The behavior model of the pile was linear elastic. However, the soil was modeled by the hardening soil model, HSS small, which is considered the most model in Plaxis 2D to model these kinds of problems because it allows to model the degradation of the soil by introduction of 3 deformation modules of the soil, which are G0, the initial deformation module of the soil, the second module, E50, and the tangent module, E odometers. It also allows to model the loading and unloading of the soil by introduction of EUR. The validation of the model. The comparison between the numerical results and measures data shows that the numerical model has well modeled the behavior of the pile. However, it underestimated the pile's head displacement by 8%. Moreover, the bending moment is well predicted by the numerical model during the loading cycle, as it is depicted in this picture. On the other hand, the numerical model overestimated the maximal bending moment in the pile, as you can see in the second picture. This picture is for the unloading, and these 2 pictures are unloading. This one was for the first cycle, and that one was for the 12th cycle. To study the effect of slenderness, we have made parametric study where we have changed the length of the pile according to the equation which was done by the French code Fassikil-Soissondeux, who suggests to calculate the transfer length of the pile, the transfer length. If the pile is greater than 3 times the transfer length, we consider the pile that is flexible. However, if it is less than the transfer length, the pile is rigid. And between, it is considered as semi-rigid. In our studies, we consider the load test that has been calibrated earlier. 3 lengths of the piles were chosen. The length of 3 meters, which is a rigid pile, 8 meters for semi-rigid pile, and 12 meters for flexible pile. As you can see in this picture, the curve in orange shows that rigid pile is stiffer than semi-rigid and flexible pile. And semi-rigid and flexible, they showed the same curve and same behavior. The second picture, which is the relative displacement according to the number of cycles, showed that the semi-rigid and rigid pile showed follow a logarithmic function. However, for the rigid pile, it was linear. Conclusion: Plaxis 2D with plane strain model showed good agreement with measured data. The semi-rigid pile behaves exactly as the flexible pile under monotonic and cyclic load. However, the rigid pile showed stiffer behavior. The evolution of relative displacement of the rigid pile followed linear function and was greater than the relative displacement of flexible pile. This result can lead us to say that rigid pile are more vulnerable than flexible, and than flexible and semi-rigid piles. Thank you for your attention.
البرزنتيشن الرابعة والأخيرة راح يقدمها الدكتور عبد الكريم الزعبي. الدكتور عبد الكريم هو Associate Professor of Civil Engineering في أبو ظبي University بالإمارات. عنوان الليكتشر Factors Affecting Landslides in After-War Zones and the Available Numerical Modeling Approaches. Dr. Zu'bi has a PhD in Civil Engineering from University of Alberta سنة 2009 من Edmonton, Canada. He is a professional engineer in Canada since 2010. More than 15 years of experience in geotechnical engineering, both in the industry and in the academia. Author of more than 15 published papers. His research interests are rock mechanics, soil mechanics, hybrid numerical modeling, and slope stability. Please, تفضل.
Assalamu alaikum. Today I will talk about factors affecting landslides. Forgive me, I like to go back and forth, but this mic cannot allow me to do that. I'll talk about factors affecting landslides in after-war zones. And yeah, please, if I can do that. And the available numerical modeling approaches. Certainly, it's a process between cause and effect. There are several causes and there are several effects. I will focus on landslides and rock in general, but that's certainly not limiting our talk to rock slopes or landslides. It will talk about the rock mass behavior under dynamic loading and different types of loading as a result of explosions and repetition of explosions over time. So I will focus on the causes, and the trigger in here is always explosions and earthquakes because they are very similar in terms of behavior and their effects on slopes and rock masses in general. Between cause and effect is always the time, and time is extremely important. If we're going to repeat something over and over, the time will take its effect on that rock slope or that rock mass or even underground caverns. So when we are talking about this, first of all, let's look at the groundwater effect. The groundwater effect, if you are a geotechnical engineer or a civil engineer, is always summarized in the talk of Perzaghi's law, which is the effective stress principle, which is the poor water pressure effect. Under dynamic loading as a result of the explosions, this water table is never constant. It's going to go up and down, and that will actually induce stresses inside our rock masses, which means that these rock masses, with time, they're going to deteriorate. That's the first thing. In addition to that, water is going to react with some minerals. They're going to destroy what we call the apparent cohesion. So if we are talking about a closed joint or even a little bit open joint with infilling material, these infilling materials are going to start to act with the result of the explosion gases and with the water itself, and it will destroy these infilling materials, and the slope or the rock mass will start to move. The key issue in here is monitoring. if we can find a way to monitor our slopes, we can do way much better job than what we are doing currently. So the second thing that I want to talk about it today is what we call the in situ stresses. Stresses in rock masses and soil masses, if you will. We're going to go into tectonic stresses first of all, gravity stresses. In addition to that, we have the surcharge loading, and the most important thing that we can talk about it today is what we call transitory stresses as a result of earthquakes or explosions. And the problem is in here, if you follow me with the mouse is not working, unfortunately. So I will just use, can you see the records? Okay. So if I'm talking about the slope in here, this is more problem. I think it's more problem than if you will. Stresses, according to this zone number 1, is subjected under completely tensile stresses. Explosions always going to use tensile stresses. So we have explosions as a result of continuous explosions. They will develop further and further more of these tensile stresses. And these tensile stresses in our materials are very dangerous, especially if we are talking about highly over-concentrated clays or if we are talking about brittle material. So if the same stress is in here, number 4, that's not a guarantee under dynamic loading. Under explosions, and numerical models later on, I will show you just 2 examples using a high level of how this slope can move from all around compressive stresses into tensile stresses as a result of the repeat of these explosions, and the slope will take off. That's what's going to happen, and you're going to see it a little bit later on if you bear with me. Another important factor is the rock mass affected by these explosions. Notice that the wave is going to move into the ground. The highest, the more the explosion amount is, the higher the speed of the wave, the deeper it will go and affect a higher amount of rock masses. So if you go to Hobbs' graph in here, Dr. Hock actually told me a course in rock mechanics, and he always said, experience is the most important thing. Experience. You go and you can transfer experience from one generation to another, it will be the perfect thing for engineers in general. So he said, if the rock mass contains only intact rock, it will be very difficult to fracture. But if it's not, if you start adding a little bit of joints and more joints and more joints and more joints, the rock mass will start to be weaker and weaker and weaker until any small cause can make a failure and cause a failure, which is absolutely we don't want. So the thing is, the repeated explosions over and over, the wave will go and move into the ground deeper and deeper, the more volume and source can be actually highly affected by maybe if you go into a factor of 71, you just need a little bit and the slope will take off. That's the idea. So let's just continue until we reach the examples. But the strength is not only a function of the joint itself as a plane surface. The joints, if you will, if you go and look at it, there are pores and asperities. These asperities are very dangerous in the dynamic loading because a small dynamic load will transfer the state of stress into tensile stresses. These asperities will start to fracture and the slope will take off and just a little bit of more movements. So we need also to pay attention to these, especially when we are talking about faults. Because faults, if we go and have high amount of explosions that are going to go deep into the ground, these faults are going to start to move. And again, we're going to go back to the first issue, which is monitoring. Our ability to use advanced technology today should be always and always our priority to completely monitor slopes using satellite, using airborne radar, using ground radars. All of these technologies are available, just we need to know how to use them and when to use them. Dynamic loading in summary. In addition to all of this, Dr. Hock again introduced a parameter called D, but this D is only for fully controlled explosions in mining. When we are talking about walls uncontrolled exposures, if you will. We're going to cause these rock slopes to actually be very weak. And that's a key issue that we need always to focus on. The most important thing is the load now coming from explosions can add to the gravity forces. And it will go and push the slope a little bit further. Time effect in general, we are talking about explosions over an extended period of time. I realize that most of us here are civil engineers, but mining is also very important. If you compare the time frame from mining to civil engineering, miners are looking for maybe a time frame of 1-2 years, something like that. But if you are talking about civil engineers, we are looking about 50 years, 100 years, sometimes you are designing large plants. So we need always to go again, focus on the time frame and monitoring during all of that period. Let's go to the examples, which is probably the most important result of my presentation today. I took a slope, it's a whole chance. This is a simplified one, of course. It consists of 3 joints. 3 joints. But these joints are non-persistent. You see there's a gap in here. This is the rock bridge. In here, there is a rock bridge. What happened is, okay, how can I model this? The problem is very difficult. You think it's very simple, but it's really very difficult. Because you need to initiate the fracture, you need to allow it to move from one point to another, to coalesce, so that the slope will take off. So the distribution was certainly not limit equilibrium. If you know limit equilibrium, you cannot use it. Even if I have limit, and in fact, cannot do this. It cannot, simply. So we need to develop something. And the approach that I proposed back in 2007 is actually what we call hybrid numerical modeling. In the hybrid numerical modeling, I used UDIC. But UDIC, again, developed by Kashka and Dr. Campbell. I met him several times, and he said, it's only limited by your imagination. So once he said that, I realized that I can generate enormous amount of blocks here, inside this. Enormous amount of blocks. And then, without limiting the failure to the side failure or the shear failure, I would go and hit this slope with repeated 0.1G, small earthquake, small explosion, 0.1G, over and over. It's a scale. According to equilibrium, this slope will never fail. It has a strong property. It has a phi of 35, a cohesion of 1.25, and tensile strength of 0.9, and phi is 38. This is the road cut. You take it, you run limited equilibrium several times, it will never fail. No matter what you do. So what I did is take this example, hit it with 0.1G 10 times, and the slope started at this. Notice the windy cracks in here. These cracks from the bridge starts at the tip in here, go to the second joint, to the third joint, and the slope took off, and the ripple amount is here. These are the rocks. These are the small blocks inside my slope. You see how it goes? If I go now to a larger slope, this is 100 meter slope. Let me take you to a 300 one and then out of blue. So, my last example, forgive me that I'm speaking in English, really, but this is why it's hard. So, it's actually an open pit slope mine, goes approximately 30 meters. This is mining by explosions. We take the slope toe in here, one piece at a time. So at that point, what happened is the following. We were monitoring, again, the key issue is monitoring. Our ability to monitor the slope. So during monitoring, using again, at that time it was a laser scanner, and we were shooting at different points in the slope. And at the beginning, the slope starts to move and topple. It starts to topple toward us, and we don't want that to be very fast, because if it happens very fast, you get those millions of human century lives. So we don't want that. So we started monitoring, and we were able actually to monitor these red points. See that? All of these red points, during the movement. So we are talking about meters now. Notice how many meters? 14. 15 meters. This is not a small amount given in the mining industry. So my comment is, okay, can we stop mining? And when we need to stop mining? Again, we go and depend on what we call the unit damage model. The unit damage model was able actually to simulate the cave, complete from A to Z during mining, and it shows at the total here, the slope behaved the same way, and we were able to detect these green points, a perfect match with the plane measurements in the field. The fracturing pattern, this is the fracturing pattern in that one-sided slope. No continuous slope failure occurred, but it was allowed to happen. So the perfect recommendation at this point is actually let's go and stop mining. Let's go and stop mining. If we mine a little bit more, it can take off. Well, as usual, engineers will say something, scientists will say something, and the decision comes from high above, right? Don't go and stop mining. This is money. They did not listen. They mined, I guess, 50 meters after this depth. And the slope, thank you very much.